I got the call around 3 in the afternoon. A young man, mid-20s, gone somewhere in the Pinewood National Forest. His sister said he'd gone hiking 2 days ago and never checked in. No trailhead check-ins, no notes, nothing. Just vanished. I don't usually take missing hiker calls personally, but there's a weight to this forest. A quiet you don't shake off once you step beneath the trees. I remember pulling up to the ranger station, the sun slicing through the canopy in thin, golden lines that made the dust in the air look like sparks. The station smelled of damp wood and old coffee. Ranger Jenkins was already there, pacing back and forth, muttering numbers and coordinates. "Sheriff," he said without looking up, "we've got nothing yet. No footprints past the last marker. It's like he just disappeared." I frowned, tightening my jacket against the creeping cold that seemed out of place for late October. "Any reports of wildlife activity? Bears, wolves, anything?" He shook his head. "Nothing. And that's the weird part. The cameras, trail cams, recorded him entering the forest, but nothing after that. No movement, no animals. Just static." The word static hung in the air longer than it should have, like a warning I couldn't shake. We geared up. Flashlights, two-way radios, thermal imaging, the usual stuff. I always bring my old revolver on these trips. Not because I expect trouble from animals, but because sometimes human fear is worse than any predator. We hit the trail around 4:15 p.m. The forest swallowed us immediately. Pinewood is dense, older than the town itself. The trees lean close together, branches interlocking, so that sunlight barely reaches the forest floor. Every step you take crunches on dead leaves, and you start to feel the weight of silence pressing in. I could hear my own breath in the cold air, and for the first hour, I thought I could smell something else, like wet earth, decaying leaves, but sharp, metallic, almost like iron. I dismissed it as nerves. As we moved deeper, I noticed a change in the air. The deeper we went, the thicker it became. Not humid or damp, but expectant, like the forest itself was waiting. My flashlight cut through the undergrowth in narrow beams, and shadows leapt along the trunks. I kept catching glimpses of movement, just at the edge of vision, but every time I turned my head, there was nothing. I told myself it was nothing. Animals, maybe a deer or a fox, but the feeling of being watched refused to leave. I've been a sheriff here for 15 years. Seen my share of strange things. People lost, kids wandering off, accidents. But this forest had a rhythm, a patience, that I hadn't felt anywhere else. It was patient and hungry. We found his backpack near a creek, half buried in mud. The straps were torn, the contents scattered. A water bottle, a granola bar, a small notebook. Nothing seemed disturbed except the notebook. The pages were wet, stuck together, but I managed to peel one back, scribbled across it, almost frantically, were the words. "I hear them. They're close. I can't." I felt a chill run down my spine. Whoever he was, he had been terrified. And whatever terrified him, it was still here. We followed the creek for another half hour, flashlights bouncing across moss-covered rocks. And then I heard it, a sound so soft, I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. At first, it was like whispering leaves or the wind to the pine needles. Then it sharpened, like someone walking deliberately on dry twigs. Slow, measured, not running, not panicked, watching. I stopped, held my breath. Ranger Jenkins froze behind me, hand tight on his radio. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. He nodded. Yeah, I hear it." The forest went quiet again, but the silence was different now. Heavier, watching. I could feel it brushing against my mind, scratching at something I couldn't name. We pressed on. Every few steps, I swore I saw shapes moving in the periphery. Human-like, but wrong. Too tall, too thin. Sometimes, I thought I caught the glint of eyes reflecting my flashlight back at me. But when I turned, nothing. It got darker faster than it should have. The sun was still out, but the canopy thickened until it was twilight under the trees. Shadows pulled in unnatural hollows, and the creek started to sound louder, like rushing water, but also like breathing. I checked my watch. 6 o'clock. 2 hours in, and nothing except that damn backpack and my own creeping dread. Then I found the footprints. small, bare, pressed deep into the soft mud beside the creek. Human, but wrong. The toes were too long, the spacing too narrow. They led away from the creek into the thicker forest. And that's when I felt it for the first time, not behind me, not beside me, but all around me, watching, waiting. Something that didn't belong to this world, pacing us, learning us. I stopped again. "We need to turn back," I said, voice tight. Jenkins shook his head. "We can't. Not yet. We're close." I didn't argue. I wanted to, but my gut told me we were already too far. Too late. The deeper we went, the forest changed. The trees seemed to lean closer, and the air got heavier. I could see our breath like smoke, but it wasn't cold anymore, just thick. The shadows moved with rhythm that shouldn't exist in nature. I felt it again, a pressure behind my eyes, like something was trying to burrow into the skull. I caught movement again, barely there, a flash of white among the dark trunks. I raised my flashlight and revolver at the same time, heart hammering. Nothing, just the echo of leaves. "Did you see it?" I hissed. Jenkins didn't answer. His face was pale, tight, lips pressed together. He was seeing it too. I could tell. Then the whispers started. Not loud. Not words I could understand, but soft, circling, coming from every direction at once. Breathing, hissing, like the forest itself was speaking through the leaves. I felt my stomach knot. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't listen. I had to keep moving. Had to find him before it found me first. We found more of the footprints. They split off, leading deeper into a thicket, so dense that our flashlights barely penetrated it. The air grew warmer here, heavy with the scent of rot and iron. I wanted to turn back, but the thought of leaving that boy, I couldn't. I remember the notebook again, the frantic scribbles, and I felt the same panic rising in me. Whoever, or whatever, he saw, it had stayed with him, and now it was here, watching me, learning me, waiting. I called out his name. Nothing, just the echo of my own voice, swallowed by the trees. And then I thought I heard a reply, not human, not quite, just a sound that mimicked it, soft and wet, curling through darkness. I froze. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body stayed rooted to the mud. I wanted to tell Jenkins to leave, but my voice was gone. I felt the forest tighten around us, pressing, like it could crush thoughts as easily as bones. For the next hour, we followed the trail in silence, broken only by our footsteps in the creek behind us, which had started to sound wrong. Louder, faster, like water rushing over 1,000 tiny bones. I kept glancing at the shadows, and every time I did, they seemed to shift just enough to make me doubt reality. Finally, we stopped at a clearing. The footprints ended abruptly at a circle of twisted roots, black and slick with moss. Nothing. No boy. No trace except the mud, the roots, and the suffocating feeling of being observed. I leaned against a tree, gasping for air, trying to convince myself it was over. But I knew, something had followed him. Something had been here for him. And now, it was here for us. Jenkins didn't speak. He didn't need to. We both knew the same thing. We weren't alone. Not in this forest. Not ever. And as I write this, hours later, sitting back at the station with lights on and doors locked, I can still feel it. Watching. Waiting. Somewhere in Pinewood, in the dark that never ends. Something is out there, and God help me, I think it's learning how to move quietly through the world, just like it did with him. I'll go back. I have to, because that boy is out there. And the forest will not let him go. But I will not be the same. That I know, because once you feel it watching you, you never really leave. The night came faster than I expected. By the time we pulled back from the clearing, the sun had vanished entirely, leaving the forest swallowed in darkness. It wasn't just night. It was a thick, crawling shadow that settled into every nook of Pinewood. Our flashlights cut narrow beams through it. But even that light seemed swallowed as soon as it touched the trees. I shouldn't have gone back in. I knew it, but the thought of leaving him, leaving that boy, alone in the forest was unbearable. I tightened my jacket, adjusted my radio, and took a deep breath that tasted like wet dirt and fear. The footprints had started again where the clearing ended. Strange, small but wrong. Too long, too narrow, toes spreading in unnatural angles. They crisscrossed the mud, appearing and disappearing, as if someone or something was deliberately playing with us. Every time I knelt to examine them, a chill ran down my spine. Something was here, and it knew we were watching. I followed, careful not to make a sound, though my own heartbeat filled the silence like a drum. Ranger Jenkins trailed behind me, his flashlight bobbing with each step. Neither of us spoke. Words felt heavy in this place, like speaking aloud would give shape to whatever was out there. Then it started, the whispering. At first, I thought it was wind brushing against the branches, but it wasn't wind. It was soft, lilting, curling around the trees, echoing off the trunks in impossible directions. I raised my radio, thinking maybe one of the other rangers was trying to reach us, but static greeted me, followed by voices. Not words, not language I recognized, just soft, urgent whispers. Almost human, almost pleading, almost mocking. "Do you hear that?" I whispered to Jenkins. He froze. Yeah, I hear it." His voice trembled. For the first time, I realized he was scared in the way I hadn't allowed myself to be yet. That tight, cold fear that creeps into your stomach and anchors itself there. We pressed on, flashlights sweeping the undergrowth. Every so often, the whispers would rise, brushing against the edge of comprehension. It was like the forest was speaking to the trees, through the mud, through the air itself. I tried to make sense of it, but it made my teeth ache. The footprints grew more erratic. Sometimes they led forward, sometimes spiraled back on themselves, always ending just out of reach of our lights. I caught glimpses of something moving ahead, just a flicker at the edge of vision. But whenever I focused, there was nothing. I tried calling out the boy's name. Each time my voice swallowed by the forest, answered only by the echo of the whispers. Jenkins stopped walking, his radio vibrating in his hand. "It's coming through again," he said, voice low. The static on the radio twisted into words. Soft, whispering, and they sounded like him, like the boy. "Don't come closer." I froze. My throat went dry. Every instinct screamed to run, to leave, to get back to the lights of the town, but I couldn't. I had to find him. Whoever, or whatever, was out here had him, and I wouldn't abandon him like the forest had. The trees grew closer, branches brushing against my face, snagging my jacket. The air thickened, humid with decay, and the shadows seemed to gather in corners, waiting. I felt watched, every nerve screaming at me that we were not alone. Not really. Something out here could see us in a way no human could. Then I saw it, a movement, just ahead, along the trail. My flashlight caught it for a split second. A shadow that was tall and too thin, gliding between the trunks with a stiffness that no human could manage. I blinked and it vanished, leaving only the wet mud and the twisted roots behind. "Did you see that?" I whispered, voice shaking. Jenkins didn't answer. He was staring ahead, pale, tight-lipped, the flashlight trembling in his grip. I knew he saw it too. We pressed on. The whispers on the radio changed, growing louder, more insistent. At times they mimicked us, our own voices, calling our names, taunting us. I could barely tell what was real anymore. Each step forward felt like stepping deeper into a trap we didn't understand. I caught another movement in the periphery, a flash of white, a shape that moved against the natural rhythm of the forest, like it didn't belong. My gut clenched. My revolver felt heavier in my hand than it should have. I wanted to shoot, to strike out, but my body refused. My mind screamed at me not to, and a voice deep in my chest told me it would not die like that. Not this. We stumbled into a clearing that shouldn't have been there. A strange hollow with trees twisted in unnatural angles, roots like fingers clawing at the ground. The footprints ended here, but the whispers didn't. They swirled, circling, impossible, echoing off the hollow like a song I didn't recognize, but somehow knew I shouldn't hear. I knelt, shining my flashlight on the mud. The boys' prints were gone, but smaller ones remained, oddly shaped, thin, too long. They led in circles, crisscrossing in impossible patterns. My stomach turned. Whoever, or whatever, was here, it had been toying with him. And now with us. Jenkins spoke, voice barely audible. We should leave. Now! I wanted to, but I couldn't. I couldn't leave. I felt that weight pressing in again. The forest alive in a way I had only felt once before. Something was here, alive, watching, learning, and if we turned back now, it would follow. The whispers grew sharper, more urgent, like 100 voices speaking at once. And then silence, absolute silence. I froze, every hair on my body standing up. Even Jenkins stopped breathing. The forest waited, and then I heard it. The faintest scrape behind us, a sound like claws or nails brushing against the bark. My heart lurched. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of wet earth and iron. I could feel it moving closer, brushing along the edges of thought, the edges of reality. I called out. My voice cracked. Who's there? Nothing. Only the echo of the whispering from before, faint and distant now, carried on the cold air. And then a soft laugh. Not human, not childlike, but something that mimicked a laugh, curling around the trees, around the roots, around me. We pressed on, deeper, following the circle of mud and roots. Every step felt heavier. The shadows moved with us, twisting, leaning closer, pressing into our vision. My flashlight caught shapes that shouldn't exist. Thin limbs, pale and glinting, fleeting glimpses of faces that were wrong in proportion, wrong in expression, smiling, watching, waiting. At some point, I stopped tracking the boy. I stopped looking for him. The footprints, the whispers, the strange shapes, everything had blended into a pattern I couldn't read. I felt the forest pressing into my chest, forcing my heartbeat to slow and speed all at once. It was learning me now. I could feel it. Every thought I had, every instinct, every fear. It knew. Hours passed, maybe minutes. I lost track of time. Every step forward felt like I was wading deeper into something I shouldn't. The whispers grew again, rising from mud, the roots, the trees themselves. They twisted our names, our thoughts, our doubts. I could barely tell where I ended and the forest began. And then I realized something. The boy wasn't out here alone. He had never been alone. Not really. Whatever had taken him, whatever had toyed with him, had always been here, always waiting, always learning. And now it knew us. Jenkins shook me. Sheriff, we should leave. I nodded. But even as we turned back, retracing our steps, I knew we hadn't left anything behind. Something had followed. It always followed. And one day, it would wait for me to slip, to falter, to be alone, and then it would take me too. I don't know how long we wandered before we found the trail back to the edge of the forest. The whispers faded. The strange shapes disappeared. But the memory stayed, lodged in my chest like a stone. I can still hear them sometimes, at night, when I close my eyes. The soft, impossible whispering, curling around the edges of thought, repeating words I can't understand but will never forget. Pinewood is alive. I've seen it. I've felt it, and it won't let go. Not of him, not of me, not of anyone who steps beneath those trees. And I will go back. I will, because the forest doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. And somewhere, deep in its heart, the boy waits, and I have to find him before whatever watches decides I'm the next lesson it wants to teach. I didn't sleep that night. Even after we made it back to the station, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. It was there in the corners of my vision, in the faint creak of the floorboards, in the way the windows seemed too dark for the hour. The forest had a way of lingering, like it had found a way inside me. By morning, the search team was already waiting. 2 deputies, a volunteer ranger, and a pair of trained dogs. They all looked tired, but not from lack of sleep. From the kind of unease that settles deep, a quiet dread no one wants to admit. I tried to sound confident, but my voice came out rough. We'll start from the last known point and move north. Stay close. Stay on radio. No one argued. By 9, we were back under the trees. The sun barely touched the ground, filtered through that thick canopy of pine and oak. Every sound, our boots, the dogs panting, the faint buzz of radios, seemed swallowed by the woods. I had the map in my hand, but it felt useless. The forest didn't match the paper anymore. It was alive, shifting, breathing. We moved slow, careful. The air was heavy with the smell of damp soil and sap. Somewhere in the distance, a woodpecker knocked against a tree, and for a moment, I almost believed things were normal again. But then the dogs stopped, both of them, ears perked, tails rigid. One of them gave a low growl, staring into the dark stretch between the trees. "What is it?" one of the deputies asked, voice too loud for stillness. I raised my hand for silence. The forest was quiet now, too quiet. Then, in that silence, I heard it, a soft crunch. Footsteps, slow, careful, not ours. I swung my flashlight toward the sound, the beam catching on twisted branches and leaves. Nothing, just the forest staring back. But I swear I saw it then, a shape, barely there, a figure standing between the trees. Tall, still, watching. "Hello." I called out, voice trembling more than I wanted. No answer. The figure shifted, just slightly, and in that tiny movement, something inside me turned cold. It wasn't the boy. It wasn't anyone I knew. And somehow, I knew that it wasn't supposed to move the way it did. It was like watching a reflection on rippling water. Distorted, wrong. The dogs began to bark, pulling against their leashes, teeth bare at the empty space between the trees. The volunteer ranger swore under his breath. "It's nothing," one of the deputies muttered. "Probably a trick of light." But it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. I stepped closer, flashlight trembling in my grip. The air grew colder, heavy enough to sting the back of my throat. I could hear my own heartbeat now, loud and uneven. The beam caught on movement again, just a flicker of white, a face, pale and fleeting, gone before I could focus. Then silence, only the forest, watching. We pushed forward, following the direction it had gone. The tracks beneath our feet were muddled, but fresh, footprints overlapping animal prints, like the forest was rewriting itself as we moved. Every few steps, I looked back, half expecting to see that tall shape standing behind us. Jenkins was quiet, his eyes darting from tree to tree. I could tell he felt it too. The weight, the pressure, the sense that something was circling just beyond reach. By midday, the light started to fade again. The trees grew denser, branches tangling overhead. It felt like the forest was trying to close us in, seal us off from the rest of the world. Then the radio crackled. Static first. Then a voice, faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. "Sheriff." It was Jenkins' voice. But Jenkins was standing right next to me. We both froze. The others looked around, faces pale. The voice came again, softer now. "Sheriff, don't turn around." I felt something crawl down my spine, cold and slow. I looked at Jenkins, and he looked at me, eyes wide with the same fear. "Who has radio channel 3? I asked. Everyone shook their heads. We stood there, radios hissing softly. The forest silent except for that faint, almost playful whisper of my own name coming through the static. It was my voice now. "Sheriff." That was enough. I turned the radio off. The others followed. For a while, we didn't speak. We just moved. Deeper, quieter, every step heavier. The air had changed again, thick with that strange metallic smell I'd noticed before. Like iron, like blood. The ground sloped downward into a shallow ravine, and that's when I saw it again. The figure, standing across the ravine between two trees. The same height, the same stillness. Only this time it was closer. I couldn't see its face, only the suggestion of one, pale and wrong. It leaned slightly forward, like it was curious, like it was waiting. The deputy beside me raised his flashlight, but before the beam hit it, the thing moved. It didn't walk. It didn't run. It folded, like a shadow collapsing into itself, and vanished. The deputy cursed under his breath. What the hell was that? No one answered, because we all knew it wasn't something we could explain. The dogs began to whimper then, low and panicked. One of them tried to pull free, barking wildly toward the ravine. I knelt beside it, running my hand along its neck to calm it. But then I noticed something. Mud smeared along its fur, streaks of dark red beneath. I lifted my hand. It wasn't mud. The smell hit first. Iron, thick and raw. Back up, I said quietly. Everyone back up. We did, slowly. Every instinct told me not to run. Running felt wrong, like it would draw its attention. We reached higher ground, the ravine disappearing behind us, but the air stayed heavy. My heart wouldn't settle. Every sound felt louder now. The crunch of leaves, the hiss of breath, the faint pulse in my ears. Then the forest went silent again. The silence was worse than the whispers. It was a silence that listened, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. And from that silence came a sound, soft, steady footsteps. Behind us, I turned slowly, every muscle screaming not to. My flashlight flickered over the trees, the branches, the undergrowth. Nothing, just darkness layered on darkness. But then a flash. White, tall, wrong. It moved between the trees, not fast, but deliberate. It wasn't walking. It was gliding. The volunteer ranger shouted, panic breaking through his voice. There, I saw it. Keep your light on it. I yelled, though my own voice trembled. The beam caught something, part of it, an arm, long too long, pale skin stretched tight over bone, then gone again. We broke formation, each of us swinging our flashlights wildly. The air grew thick with panic. Someone tripped. The dogs barked, pulling against their leashes, dragging their handler down. Hold the line, I shouted, though I didn't believe it anymore. Through the chaos, I saw it again, closer now, between two trunks, leaning just slightly, like it was watching us decide. It didn't blink, it didn't breathe, and for one unbearable second, I thought I could see its face, smooth, almost human, but wrong in every way that mattered, like something trying too hard to look real. Then it was gone, just gone. We stayed frozen for a long time after that, the forest pressing in, the silence too thick to breathe. No one spoke until Jenkins finally whispered, "It's leading us." I didn't answer, but I knew he was right. The footprints, the whispers, the figure. It wasn't chasing us, it was guiding us, deeper, towards something. We turned back as the light began to fade. I told the team to regroup, but the radios wouldn't stay on. The static returned, filled with faint, overlapping voices. My voice, Jenkins' voice, the missing boy's voice. Each whisper layered over the next until it felt like the forest was breathing them all at once. By the time we reached the edge of the trail, one of the dogs refused to move. It stood rigid, staring into the darkness we'd left behind. Whining low, I followed its gaze, half expecting to see nothing, but I saw it again, far off, standing between the trees. Still, watching, the shape didn't move. It didn't need to, because I realized something then, something I still can't explain. It wasn't standing between the trees. It was a shadow between them, and as we walked away, I swear I saw it shift, stretching, thinning, following the pattern of our flashlights, clinging to the edges of the dark like it belonged to every shadow that would ever fall in Pinewood. That night, I sat in my truck long after the others left, the engine off, the woods silent around me. Every time I looked out the window, I thought I saw something move in reflection, just a flicker, a trick of the light. But deep down I knew better, because once you've seen it, once it's seen you, you start noticing the dark more often. You start hearing footsteps where there should be none, and you realize the shadows don't always stay where they belong. It's strange how quiet a forest can get when it wants to. That morning, the air was still thick and wrong. No birds, no rustle of wind, just silence, heavy enough that every breath sounded too loud. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears until it starts to hum. We'd lost the trail again. The footprints, if they were even real, had faded into the mud. The boy was gone. So were the whispers for now. It should have been a relief, but somehow the silence felt worse. I'd been in Pinewood my whole life. I knew these woods. I knew every stream, every clearing, every marker. But that day, I didn't recognize a thing. The map didn't match the land anymore. Paths bent where they shouldn't. Trees I swore I'd seen before now stood in places that didn't make sense. Jenkins was the first to say it out loud. We'd been walking in circles. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But the way his voice crack told me, he already knew I couldn't. The compass spun uselessly in my hand, twitching, never settling on north. The radio crackled with faint bursts of static. No signal from the others. Even the dogs wouldn't stop pacing. I could feel the forest breathing. Slow, patient, waiting. We stopped near an old tree, split down the middle by lightning years ago. I remembered it, or I thought I did. I'd seen it once before near the edge of the woods, but that was miles from here. Now, it stood before me again, silent and familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. "Sheriff," Jenkins said quietly, "You okay?" I nodded, though my mouth had gone dry. "Yeah, just thinking." But I wasn't thinking. I was remembering. The boy's voice on the radio. That broken whisper. "Don't come closer." It played in my head on repeat, looping, matching the rhythm of the static that kept crackling from my belt. I didn't turn it off this time. I just let it play. Like part of me was waiting to hear something else. And I did. The static began to change. It wasn't just noise anymore. There were words in it. Soft, distorted, faint, but words. "Help, please." Jenkins heard it too. He turned, eyes wide, clutching his radio. "That's him." I froze. The voice came again, clearer this time, layered with static like it was pushing through water. "I can't see. I can't." Then silence. The kind of silence that makes your heart skip a beat, because it feels intentional. Jenkins stepped forward. "We need to trace it." "Trace what?" I said. "There's no signal." He didn't answer. He just started moving, following some invisible pull. The radio pressed his ear. I followed, every step crunching louder than it should have. The forest swallowed the sound almost immediately. The further we went, the stranger the air felt. It wasn't just cold. It was thick, humming, charged like before a thunderstorm. I could feel it in my teeth, my fingertips, the kind of tension that makes your skin crawl before your brain knows why. The static returned, louder this time, words hidden beneath it. "It's watching." Jenkins froze mid-step. His breathing quickened. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, but I didn't trust my voice. The static flared again, spitting more fragments, like the forest itself was speaking to the radio. "Run, can't move roots." Then another sound, barely audible, beneath it all. Breathing. Slow. Wet. I turned in a slow circle, my flashlight sweeping across the trees. They all looked the same. Pale bark. Black shadows. But I swear they were leaning closer. Just slightly. The ground beneath me felt uneven, like it was shifting. "We're not alone," Jenkins whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We both knew. Something had found us. The radio clicked again. Pop hiss. Pop. Then, clear as day, the boy's voice came through. "Sheriff." My throat tightened. "Yeah," I said, before realizing how insane it was to talk back. The voice came again. "You shouldn't have come." Then static. The words hit like ice in my chest. Jenkins looked at me, eyes wide. "It's him. It has to be." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Not anymore. I tried to adjust the radio, to change the frequency, but every channel was the same. Static layered with whispers. Words I almost understood. Voices I recognized, mine, Jenkins, the boys, all overlapping. And beneath it, something else. Low, deep, like a heartbeat in the static. We walked on. I don't know how long. Time didn't move right anymore. The light never changed. It was always dim, like the sun couldn't reach this far. Eventually, we came across another clearing. At first, it looked normal, just a ring of trees, fallen leaves, and soft earth. But the moment I stepped in, my radio screamed. Not static, not voices, just one long, piercing tone. I dropped it instinctively, but the noise didn't stop. It filled the air, rattling through the trees, bouncing off the trunks. Then, just as suddenly, it cut off. Silence again. I reached down to pick the radio up. The screen was cracked, flickering faintly, but still on. For a second, I thought I saw words flash across the display, like a message. Stay still. I blinked and it was gone. I told myself it was a glitch, but every instinct screamed that it wasn't. Jenkins had backed away, hand trembling over his holster. "This place isn't right," he whispered. "We have to go." He was right, but when I turned back the way we'd come, there was no path, just trees, endless, identical trees. The forest had closed around us. We called out. We yelled until our voices cracked. Nothing answered, not even an echo. The static came again, faint now, quieter, like it was whispering under the silence. Behind you, I turned. Nothing, just the forest. But I could feel it, right there, watching from between the trunks. I could feel it the way you feel someone standing too close in the dark. Jenkins stumbled backward, muttering, "No, no, no," under his breath. The radio fell from his hand. The static grew louder, sharper, more violent. It began to pulse in rhythm with the sound of our breathing. Then came the voice again, but not like before. Not faint, not distorted. It was right in my ear. "You can't leave." I spun around, flashlight shaking. The light caught on something pale. A face, maybe, but it melted into the shadows before I could see it. Jenkins grabbed my arm. "We have to move." We ran. Branches toward our clothes. Roots clawed at our boots. The air itself felt heavier, as if the forest didn't want to let us go. I could hear my own name echoing through the static, over and over, each time closer, each time louder. "Sheriff, Sheriff." When we finally broke through the tree line, the world looked wrong. The light too bright, the air too thin. For a second, I thought I saw the same clearing repeating again and again in the distance, like we'd never actually left. Jenkins collapsed beside me, gasping, eyes wide and empty. I turned off the radio. The silence that followed felt alive. Breathing, listening. That was the last time I heard the boy's voice. Or maybe the last time it let me hear him. Now, every time I touch that radio, I swear I can feel warmth under static, like something still breathing on the other side, waiting for me to turn on again. Sometimes, when I do, I hear the same words, over and over. "You shouldn't have come." And each time, I wonder if the forest is still out there waiting, or if it ever really let us leave at all. Because at night, when everything is still, when the wind dies and the static hums low through the speakers, I swear I can hear it breathing back. It was a little after midnight when the call came through. Dispatch said a trucker had gone missing out at the old Rest Hollow truck stop, about 15 miles east of town, along Route 19. I remember staring at the radio for a few seconds after she said it, waiting for her to tell me it was a joke. Nobody used that stop anymore. It had been shut down for years, ever since the gas pumps went dry and the owner just vanished. But she didn't sound like she was joking. "Sheriff, caller says he saw a rig parked out there since sundown," she told me. "Lights still on, door open, no one inside." I didn't ask how anyone could have seen it. There's nothing out that way but blacktop and trees. But I knew who she meant. There's a local named Ed who drives that stretch every night hauling livestock. He talks too much on the CB, but he's honest. If Ed said there was a truck out there, I almost told dispatch I'd check in the morning. Almost. But something in her voice, that small tremor, made me grab my keys instead. The station clock read 12:47 when I left. The roads were empty, the kind of empty that feels like the world's already asleep without you. The sky was clouded, no moon, just the hum of the cruiser, the steady crunch of tires on gravel, and the thin, hollow sound of radio static. I remember thinking how strange it was, that feeling of being watched even when you know there's no one around. It had started before I even reached the truck stop. The Rest Hollow sign appeared out of the dark like a ghost, half lit, flickering. The words, "Open 24 hours," hanging on even though the place had been dead for years. The first thing I saw was the rig. It was a red Peterbilt, old but clean, parked crooked near the pumps. The engine wasn't running, but the headlights were still on. The door was open just a crack, like someone had stepped out for a smoke and never came back. I parked beside it, left my engine running. The air felt heavy, like the night itself was holding its breath. "Dispatch, I got eyes on the vehicle," I said into the radio. "Plates match your report. No sign of the driver yet." I'll check it out. Static crackled back, faint and broken. Copy that, Sheriff. Proceed with call, then silence. I tapped the mic. Say again? Nothing, just more static. I stepped out of the cruiser, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the dark, pale and weak against the fog rolling in off the highway. It was cold, colder than it should have been for late summer. The door of the truck creaked when I opened it the rest of the way. Inside, the cab was neat, too neat. Coffee, still warm in the cup holder. CB mic hanging from its cord. Wallet on the seat. No sign of struggle. No sign of blood. Just gone. I checked the glove box. Registration said the driver's name was Daniel Holt, 42, from Colorado Springs. Nothing unusual there, but when I turned to step down, my boot hit something on the floor. A small handheld radio. Old model. Worn and scratched. Not the kind truckers usually carry. It wasn't ours, that's for sure. I pressed the button out of habit. Static hissed through, soft but sharp, like someone exhaling through their teeth. Then a voice, barely a whisper. Hello? I froze. It was distant. Tinny weak, but definitely human. Sheriff Mason, I said quietly. Who is this? The radio crackled again, longer this time. Then don't. I waited. Nothing more came. I turned toward the empty highway. The night stretched on forever, silent, endless. The gas station itself was dark, windows boarded, but I could see faint light flickering inside the diner next door. It was that kind of light that doesn't move right. Too slow, like it's underwater. Hello? I called out. Daniel Holt, Sheriff's Department. No answer. I crossed a lot, crunching over broken glass and gravel. The air smelled faintly of diesel and rain. I shone my flashlight through one of the windows. Inside, the place looked untouched since it closed. Chairs flipped on tables. Menu still by the counter, dust thick enough to dull the reflections. Then something moved in the corner of my beam. Not much, just a shadow that didn't fit. I turned the light toward it, but there was nothing there. Sheriff Mason to dispatch. I said into my shoulder mic, keeping my voice low. Possible sign of movement inside the diner. Still no driver. More static, then a half second of speech. You're not alone, before cutting out again. The radio on my belt wasn't supposed to pick up anything but dispatch. So whatever that was, it wasn't coming from them. I thought about heading back to the cruiser. Every instinct in me said to, but something kept me there. Maybe it was duty, maybe pride, or maybe that same pull that drags you closer to the edge just to see how far down it goes. The diner door wasn't locked. It groaned open with sound that made my skin crawl. Inside, it smelled like mildew and old coffee. My flashlight caught the counter, the stools, a few old ketchup bottles turned to sludge. I stepped around a toppled chair, careful not to slip on the dust. Then I heard it, a soft thud, from the back room, Sheriff's Department. I called again, but quieter now. Anyone back there? No response, just another thud. Then the faint scrape of something dragging across tile. I moved toward the sound, slow, one step at a time. The kitchen door was cracked open. I pushed it gently, shining my light inside. Empty. Freezers, old dishes, rusted utensils. Nothing alive. But on the floor, beneath the swinging door, I saw tracks. Boot prints. They led in, but not out. Daniel, I said softly, more to myself than anyone. That you? The radio in my hand hissed again, sudden and sharp. You should have stayed. The voice was the same. Hollow, distant. I dropped it instinctively. The sound echoed off the tiles. When I bent to pick it up, the flashlight slipped in my other hand and landed hard. The beam rolled toward the corner of the room and caught something there. For a split second, I thought I saw a person, a man maybe, standing just beyond the reach of the light. But when I lifted the flashlight again, the space was empty. Every nerve in my body told me to run, but I forced myself to step forward. I had to know. I reached the back door and pulled it open. The wind hit me, cold and wet. Outside was the truck stop's lot again. The fog was thicker now, curling around the truck's headlights like smoke. Except there was no sound, not even my own footsteps. The air swallowed everything. Then the radio came alive again. "Sheriff." My heart stopped. It was clearer this time. "Sheriff, he's still here." I froze. "Who's speaking?" The voice broke, half static, half whisper. "Don't look." The sound cut off. Then movement in the fog. Something tall, human-shaped. Maybe. It stood between the pumps, too still to be a person, too dark to be a shadow. I raised my light, but the beam just bent around it. I took one step back. My hand was shaking so bad, I almost dropped the flashlight again. The figure didn't move. I blinked just once, and it was gone. The fog swallowed it whole, like it had never been there. I don't remember getting back to the cruiser. 1 second I was standing there. The next I was inside, slamming the door, locking it, trying to catch my breath. When I looked back toward the truck, the headlights were off. The door was closed, and in the reflection of my rear view mirror, for just a moment, I saw someone sitting in the passenger seat beside me. No sound, no breath, just the faint outline of a man watching the road. I turned my head, and the seat was empty. The radio crackled one last time. "Sheriff," it whispered, "don't come back." Then silence. I sat there for a long time, staring at the old sign flickering through the fog, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But when I finally drove off, I glanced at the passenger seat again. The cup of coffee I'd left on the dashboard was gone. When I went back to the truck stop the next night, I told myself it was just procedure, just another follow-up. But that wasn't true. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The truck, the fog, that voice on the radio, the way the air seemed to fold in on itself when I heard it say my name. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that empty diner, that pale light flickering through the window. So when dispatch called to say they'd gotten another report, a different driver saying the rig was back, I didn't hesitate. I just got in my cruiser and drove. The road out to Rest Hollow felt longer this time, colder. Even the trees seemed different, leaning closer, like they were listening. The whole way there, my radio hissed on and off, catching bits of voices that weren't supposed to be there. Static, then a whisper, static again, then nothing. When I finally saw the glow of the truck's stop sign through the mist, my stomach sank. The red Peterbilt was there again, parked in the exact same spot as before. Only this time, the headlights weren't on. I pulled up slow, engine idling. The station looked even more dead than last night, if that was possible. But there was something else. Light. A faint pulse from inside the diner. On. Off. On again. It wasn't steady, like a bulb burning out. It was rhythmic, almost intentional. I radioed in. "Dispatch. Sheriff Mason at Rest Hollow. Truck appears to be same as prior incident. Requesting confirmation on owner status." Static. Then a reply. Faint but clear enough. "Copy, Sheriff. Record still lists Daniel Holt as missing. No updates. Proceed with call." The line cut out. I sighed. Of course it did. I stepped out. The gravel crunched beneath my boots, echoing far too loud. Every sound felt wrong out there. Too sharp, too close, like the forest was amplifying it. When I passed the rig, I noticed something different this time. The driver's door wasn't just cracked open. It was wide open, swinging slightly in the breeze that didn't exist. And there was light inside, not from the dashboard, not from the cab light. It flickered like the beam from a TV screen, except there was no TV. I climbed up careful, one hand on the door frame. Inside, the cab was still clean, everything just as I remembered. Coffee cup in the holder, wallet on the seat. But now the handheld radio wasn't on the floor. It was sitting on the dashboard, perfectly centered. I stared at it for a long moment, my reflection flickering faintly in the windshield. Then I heard a sound behind me, a door slamming. Hard, the diner's door. I turned fast, flashlight sweeping across the lot. The beam caught the diner's front window. The light inside was still flickering, but now it looked brighter, and I swear I saw movement. A shadow passing in front of the window. Just once. "Hello," I called out. "This is the sheriff's department." The light blinked twice, on, off, on, and then went dark. For a second, everything was still. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and too loud. Then Faintly, from somewhere near the gas pumps, a metallic clink, like someone tapping a wrench against the pump housing. I started toward the sound, slow, every nerve on edge. My flashlight caught glints of chrome, old glass, dust drifting like ash. No one there. But when I looked down, I saw footprints in the dirt, bare feet, leading toward the diner. I followed them. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt. The fog had thickened again, curling around the building like smoke. The diner's door was closed now, but something was rattling behind it. The handle shook once, twice, then stopped. I reached for it, slow. "Sheriff Mason," I said quietly. "If anyone's inside, come out now." No response. I turned the handle. The door swung open on its own. The smell hit me first, wetwood, old grease, dust. The kind of smell that belongs to places time's forgotten. My light cut through the dark, catching the counter, the booze, the old jukebox by the wall. And then I saw it. Every bulb in the ceiling was flickering in sequence, one after another, like something was moving beneath them, passing along the line. I froze, watching. It went from one end of the diner to the other. Click, 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 and then stopped. Right above me, the air pressure changed. My ears popped. The lights went out. For a few seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just stood there, flashlight trembling in my hand. When I turned it on again, the beam caught the security camera above the counter. It was on. The red light blinked slowly. That shouldn't have been possible. There was no power to the building. I'd seen the lines torn out last year myself. The camera turned, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. I felt that cold, familiar pulse of fear, low in the gut, spreading like frost. Then something else. The radio on my belt hissed to life. "Sheriff," I froze. The voice was warped, stretched thin through the static. "Who is this?" I asked, watching. "Who's watching?" Silence. Then, faintly, laughter, low, distorted. I stepped back toward the door, my hand tight around the radio. That's when I noticed the other sound, a soft hum, coming from the monitor behind the counter. I walked toward it, against every instinct screaming at me to leave. The screen flickered to life as I approached, black and white, static rolling across the bottom. The footage showed the gas pumps, my cruiser, the truck, empty. Then, a flicker. A figure appeared beside the truck. It looked like a man, tall, shoulders slouched forward, face blurred out by static. I leaned closer, trying to make out the shape. Then it moved, fast, straight toward the camera. The feed cut out. I stumbled back, knocking into one of the stools. The sound echoed through the diner, like a gunshot. My radio screamed with static. "Sheriff." The voice said again, sharper now, like it was right behind me. "Don't turn around." My blood went cold. I didn't move, but I could feel it. The weight of someone standing there. Too close. My flashlight shook in my hand. Then the lights flickered back on. Empty room. Just me. The radio clicked off, leaving only the hum of the monitor. The screen was back on again now, showing static. But under the noise, I could hear something else. A whisper. My name. Over and over. I backed toward the door, never taking my eyes off the screen. Just before I stepped outside, the feed changed again. It showed the diner's interior. My flashlight, my shadow, and then something else. Another shape standing behind me. I turned, heart hammering, but there was nothing there. The fog outside had thickened to near whiteout. My cruiser's headlights looked dim and warped through it. I could barely make out the shape of the truck anymore, but I could hear something. A slow, steady knock. 3 times. I followed it back toward the truck, every step feeling heavier than the last. The sound came from inside the cab. Knock, knock, knock. I reached for the door, hand shaking, and pulled it open. Empty. Only the handheld radio sat on the seat again. I picked it up, staring at it. And that's when I saw the reflection in the windshield. Someone standing in the fog, just behind me. I turned fast, light cutting through the mist. Nothing. Just white air, thick and endless. I took a step back, breath sharp, and hit my shoulder against the truck door. The radio in my hand came alive again. "Sheriff." The voice was clearer now. A man's voice. Calm. Familiar. "Why did you come back?" I swallowed hard. Who is this? Static. Then, softly, "You saw me." I dropped the radio. It cracked against the ground, still hissing. When I looked back toward the diner, every light inside turned on at once. A blinding flash. Then out again. In the fog it moved. Not drifted. Moved. Like it was being pulled toward the building. I didn't wait to see what came next. I got in my cruiser, slammed the door, started the engine. The headlights cut through the white just enough for me to see shapes. Figures, standing where the pumps used to be. Still, watching. As I drove off, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The lights at Rest Hollow flickered one last time. On, off, on. And in that final flash, I saw it. A figure standing on the diner's roof, facing the road, watching me leave. I didn't go back after that. But every few nights, the radio at my house will crackle on its own. And sometimes, just before the static fades, I swear I hear the hum of fluorescent lights. By the time I ordered everyone to pull back, I knew something wasn't right. Not just wrong off, like the air itself was turning against us. We'd been inside that truck stop for maybe an hour, but it felt longer. The lights kept flickering. The cameras in the diner showed things I couldn't explain. And the smell of burnt wiring hung in the air even though there wasn't a single spark anywhere. I told Deputy Ramos to gather his gear and get the evidence packed. "We're clearing out," I said. "Now." He looked up from the counter, face pale under the buzzing fluorescent light. "You serious, Sheriff? What about the missing driver?" I stared out the window toward the gas pumps, where one of the canopy lights was swaying in the still night air. "We'll call in a larger team tomorrow," I said quietly. "Something's wrong with this place. I can't risk you staying here any longer." Ramos didn't argue after that. Maybe he felt it too, the sense that the walls were closer than they should be, that the silence outside wasn't really silence. We started for the exit. The wind had died down. Even the bugs had gone quiet. Our boots crunched on the gravel as we walked the cruisers. The gas station sign buzzed overhead, casting a flickering red glow that barely reached the road. It should have been peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Ramos opened the trunk of his car, mumbling something under his breath. I couldn't hear him clearly, but it sounded like a prayer. Then the radio on my shoulder crackled to life. A wall of static hit first, sharp, jagged. Then through it, a faint voice. At first, I thought it was dispatch. I turned the volume up. "Don't leave." I froze. The voice was distorted, dragging through the static, like something trying to crawl out of it. "Sheriff," Ramos asked, turning toward me. I shook my head slowly. "Radio's picking something up. Stay sharp." The voice came again, clearer this time. "Don't leave yet." And then silence. I felt my stomach twist. The tone wasn't human. It had rhythm, sure, but no warmth. It sounded like words being repeated, not spoken. Ramos stepped closer. "That wasn't dispatch." "I know," I said. We stood there for a long moment, both of us staring at the dark tree line beyond the road. The woods were black, like they'd swallowed every ounce of moonlight. I couldn't see more than 10 feet past the last pump, but I swore something was moving in there, slow, deliberate, just enough to break the shadows apart. Then, one by one, the lights on the canopy went out. Not a flicker, not a power surge. Just gone, like someone flipped a switch and decided we didn't deserve light anymore. Ramos cursed under his breath. "What the hell?" "Get in the car," I said. "Now." He ran for the driver's side, and I reached for the cruiser door. That's when every radio in both vehicles came alive at once. Not with voices this time, with breathing. Heavy, uneven breathing that filled the frequency, like someone was inches from the mic but too afraid, or too broken, to speak. I lifted the receiver, my hands trembling. "This is Sheriff Dalton. Identify yourself." No response, just that breathing. Slow, then fast, then laughter, not loud, not manic, just soft, right before the static swallowed it whole. Ramos slammed his door shut and hit the ignition. "We're leaving, Sheriff." I hesitated for half a second. Looking back at the building, all the windows were glowing faintly from inside, though I knew the power was out. It wasn't light from the bulbs. It was something else. Something pulsing. For a brief second, I thought I saw a movement behind the diner window. A shadow pressed against the glass. Its shape wrong, too long, like the reflection of someone standing closer than the surface should allow. I got in the cruiser. The engine roared to life. Gravel scattered as Ramos' car pulled ahead of me, headlights cutting through the dark. I followed him onto the main road, trying not to look in the rearview mirror. But I did anyway. The truck stop was still there, sitting under the dead sky, but it looked smaller somehow, as if the darkness was folding around it. And then, through the haze of my taillights, I saw the sign flicker once more. Just once. The letters glowed bright red. And for a second, the name of the station changed. Not Hillcrest Truck Stop. Something else. Just one word. Stay. The radio hissed again, louder this time. "Sheriff, don't leave." I gripped the wheel tighter, my throat dry. "Dispatch, this is Dalton. We're en route back to station. We've got a malfunction, radio interference, and possible environmental hazard." "Copy." The line buzzed, but then a different voice answered. "Copy that." Only it wasn't dispatch. It was me, my own voice. Perfectly clear, perfectly calm. "Copy that." It repeated again, just before the static drowned it out. Ramos must have heard it too, because his brake lights flashed once. I could tell he was scared to death. We didn't talk the whole ride back. When we reached the county road, the signal finally cleared. I tried calling dispatch again. This time, they answered for real. "Sheriff, we've been trying to reach you for 20 minutes. You all right?" I looked at the clock. 20 minutes? We'd only been driving for 5. "Yeah, I lied. We're fine." I didn't mention the voice, or the light, or how the air in the car still smelled faintly like burnt metal. When we got back to the station, Ramos went straight home. He didn't say a word. I stayed behind, filling out the incident report. The words looked strange on paper, too ordinary for what we'd just seen. Halfway through, I realized my radio was still on. The channel was open. Static hummed softly in the background, like it was waiting for me to speak. I reached the dial to turn it off, then froze. Someone whispered my name. It wasn't Ramos. It wasn't dispatch. Just a voice I didn't recognize, soft, distant, like it was coming from behind the glass of a window I couldn't see through. "Sheriff." That's all it said. Then the static rose, swallowing whole. I shut the radio off and sat there in the dark office for a long time, staring at the reflection of my own face in the window. For a moment, I could have sworn my reflection moved a little slower than I did. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've had trouble sleeping. The reports are piling up, and the truck stop's been sealed off pending investigation. But sometimes when the night gets quiet enough, I still hear the static. Not from the radio. From somewhere behind me, like the sound of someone trying to reach through the air itself. Someone who still doesn't understand that I already left that place behind. Or maybe I never did. It was close to midnight when I started my patrol on Highway 47. The fog had been thick since sundown, one of those heavy, soupy blankets that swallows everything past the reach of your headlights. You could stare right ahead and still feel like you were driving into nothing. I hated nights like that. The silence, the gray walls of mist, the way my own reflection looked back at me in the glass when the dashboard light flickered. Most folks think being a deputy out here is easy. We've got more empty road than people, more woods and houses. But that's exactly what makes it uneasy. Out here, things disappear. People, too. I was on hour 4 of my shift, running the same loop from Mill Creek to the county line. Nothing unusual, just the hum of the engine and the faint hiss of the radio static. I remember thinking I'd stop by Grady's diner when I got back. Maybe grab a stale cup of coffee before heading home. Then the call came through. At first, it didn't even sound like a real transmission. Just a burst of static, like someone whispering too close to the mic. Then a voice, faint and breaking. Car? Highway 47, abandoned near marker 19. Then nothing. Dead air. I frowned and leaned forward, tapping the side of the radio. The thing crackled again but didn't respond. I checked the frequency. It wasn't one of ours. The channel wasn't registered to dispatch or any of the local units. Dispatch! This is Deputy Collins. I said into the mic, "Did you get a call about a vehicle near marker 19? A few seconds passed before her voice came back. "Negative, Collins. Nothing came through on our end. You sure it was on county frequency?" I hesitated. Sounded like it, but the line was weak. Might have been a skip signal. "Copy. You want to check it out?" I looked through the windshield. The fog was so thick now it looked like wet concrete. Every instinct told me to leave it. Probably some prank or a trucker with a bad CB radio. But the voice, it sounded real. Not like a prank at all. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'll take a look." Highway 47 runs dead through 30 miles of forest. No gas stations, no houses, no rest stops. Just 2 lanes and an ocean of trees pressing in on both sides. I drove slow, maybe 35, scanning the shoulder for any sign of a car. The farther I went, the thicker the fog got. My headlights barely cut through 5 feet ahead, and every now and then I'd catch the shape of a tree that looked like a person standing too close to the road. Each one made my heart skip before I realized it was just a shadow. At mile marker 18, the radio crackled again. "Help, it's still here." The voice was the same one. A man's voice. Weak, trembling, like he was trying not to be heard by something else. "Hello," I said quickly. "This is Deputy Collins." "Who's calling?" No answer. Just static. I felt a chill crawl down my arms. That's when I noticed something else. Every time the radio hissed, the fog outside seemed to pulse, like the air itself was breathing. I shook it off and kept driving. The numbers on the markers crawled by. 18.5, 18.7, 19. That's when I saw it. A car sitting on the shoulder, half tilted toward the ditch. Headlights off, doors shut. The fog was so dense it looked like the car was floating in it. I pulled up behind it and killed my engine. The quiet was instant and heavy. No crickets, no wind, not even the sound of my cooling hood. Just the soft tick of my hazard lights, flashing red through the mist. I stepped out. My boots hit the wet pavement, and the fog wrapped around me like something alive. "County Sheriff." I called out, "Anyone here?" No response. The car was an old gray sedan. Looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. Mud caked around the tires, and the windows were fogged from the inside. The plate was local but half covered in grime. I shined my flashlight through the driver's window. The inside was empty. No keys, no bags, no sign of a struggle. Just a faint smear across the glass, like someone's hand had pressed there from the inside. I walked around the back, checking the trunk. Locked. That's when I noticed the tracks. Footprints leading away from the car and into the trees. Bare feet. Small. Maybe a woman's. They disappeared a few yards and swallowed by the wet ground. "Great," I muttered. I radioed dispatch again. "Collins to base. I've got an abandoned vehicle near marker 19. No occupants in sight. I'm going to check the perimeter." "Copy that." Dispatch said, "Be careful out there. Collins, that fog's eating radar tonight." "Yeah, tell me about it." I started toward the tree line. The moment I stepped off the asphalt, everything changed. The sound, the air, like I'd crossed into somewhere else entirely. My flashlight beam stretched between the trees, cutting through ribbons of fog that twisted like smoke. The footprints went deeper than I thought. I kept following them, feeling the mud pull at my boots. After maybe 20 yards, I saw something that made me stop. A shape ahead, not moving, just standing. At first I thought it was a person, maybe the driver. But when I called out, it didn't answer. It didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, you okay?" No response. I raised my light higher, and my throat went dry. It wasn't a person. It was a scarecrow, or what looked like one. Someone had lashed together branches and wire, wrapped it in a torn raincoat, and stuck it upright in the mud. The face was a sackcloth mask with holes cut for eyes, but inside those holes, I swear I saw something glisten, like wet eyes looking back. I took a step closer, heart pounding. My flashlight started to flicker. then cut out completely. When the light went dark, I heard it, a voice, right behind me. Don't touch it. I spun around, shining the light again, but it was still dead. My other hand went to my gun out of instinct. Who's there? The fog shifted. Something moved just past my peripheral vision. Too close to be the wind. Too slow to be an animal. I could feel someone standing behind me. The warmth of breath against my neck. Then the radio on my shoulder hissed and screamed with static, making me jump. Through the noise came that same trembling voice. Please, it's watching me. That was enough. I backed away fast, stumbling to the mud until I hit asphalt again. My heart was thudding so hard it hurt. When I reached my cruiser, I locked the doors and sat there for a full minute, trying to steady my breathing. The scarecrow, or whatever it was, still stood out there. I could barely see its outline through the fog, but I knew it hadn't moved. I picked up the radio. Dispatch! I'm requesting backup to marker 19. Something's not right out here. Silence. Dispatch, do you copy? Nothing. Then the radio clicked. Someone breathing on the line. Slow. Wet. Like the sound of air being pulled through water. I yanked the cord out. The sound stopped. My pulse was still hammering. But I forced myself to get out again. I had to log the vehicle plate. And wait for tow. That's the job, right? Do it by the book, no matter how wrong it feels. I stepped to the back of the sedan again. The fog had thickened even more, and my flashlight barely reached my own boots. When I bent to write down the plate, I froze. The numbers weren't the same anymore. They'd changed. I blinked, wiped at the grime, but the letters stayed the same, completely different from what I'd seen 10 minutes ago. I took a step back, staring at it. My breath came out in short clouds. The air smelled metallic, like rain mixed with something burnt. Then, quietly, something knocked on the inside the car. 3 slow knocks. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. Then the radio, unplugged, crackled one last time from inside my cruiser. The same voice whispering, "Don't leave me here." I stared into the fog where the scarecrow had been. It was gone. The space where it stood was empty now, except for something lying in the mud. My badge. My own badge. I don't remember dropping it. I don't remember much after that, honestly. Just the sound of my own engine when I finally drove away. My headlights bouncing off the white wall of fog that followed me for miles. When I reached the station, the dispatcher said she never heard a word from me. No unregistered call. No backup request. Nothing on the log. But the sedan? It was there when the tow truck went out an hour later. Same plate I'd written down first. Not the one I saw change. They said I must have been tired. That fog plays tricks on the eyes. But I keep thinking about that voice. Soft, terrified, trapped in static. And every night since then, when the radio hisses for no reason, I still hear him whisper my name. The fog didn't lift the next night. It clung to the road like something alive. Thick, gray, and heavy with silence. It wasn't normal, even for Highway 47. I'd driven through bad fog before, but this felt different. It had weight to it, like it wanted to stay. I hadn't planned to go back out there. After what happened near marker 19, I filed my report, turned in early, and told myself I'd let the next shift handle it. But the thing is, sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice again, the one over the radio. Weak, breaking apart in static. Please, it's watching me. It looped over and over until I couldn't stand it. So, by 9 the next night, I was back in the cruiser, heading down that same stretch of highway. I told myself I was just double-checking, making sure the car had really been towed, that nothing was left behind. But deep down, I think I already knew. Something was waiting out there. The radio stayed quiet for the first few miles. Just the hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel under the tires when I hit the shoulder now and then. The fog rolled low and thick, swirling in patterns that didn't look like wind. Every few seconds, I caught myself glancing at the passenger seat, half expecting to see someone sitting there. I told myself I was imagining it. I had to be. But when the radio finally crackled again, I nearly drove off the road. It was faint at first, just a whisper sound under the static, like someone breathing too close to the mic. Then, Clear as day, a voice came through. Turn around. I froze. It wasn't dispatch. It wasn't a voice I recognized. And it didn't sound like it was coming from far away. It sounded like it was inside the cruiser. I grabbed the mic. This is Deputy Collins. Identify yourself. Nothing. Just another burst of static. And then something else. Music. A low warped hum. Like an old and played backward on a broken radio. It made my skin crawl. I tried changing the channel. But the static followed me, bleeding across every frequency. Even when I turned the damn radio off, I could still hear it faintly, like it had burned into the air itself. Then I saw the light. 2 bright beams appeared ahead in the fog, maybe 100 feet down the highway. Headlights. Finally, I thought, someone else out here. Maybe another deputy, or a stranded driver. I slowed down, keeping my high beams low, waiting for the shape of the car to appear through the mist. But it never did. The light stayed there, just 2 floating orbs motionless, glowing through fog. No engine sound, no silhouette, nothing. I blinked hard, leaned forward and squinted. The lights didn't move, didn't flicker, didn't even fade when I inched closer. Something about them looked wrong. They were too far apart, too bright. When I was maybe 50 feet away, I stopped. My gut screamed to stay in the car. But curiosity, stupidity maybe won out. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out, and shut the door behind me. The fog wrapped around me instantly, muting every sound except the faint buzz of the lights ahead. The air felt colder, damper. My breath came out in long, shivering clouds. I took a few steps forward, the beam of my flashlight cutting a weak path through the haze. The headlights didn't react. They just hung there, side by side, steady and silent. I called out, "This is Deputy Collins, County Sheriff's Department. Is someone there?" No answer. I walked closer, every step slower than the last. When I reached what should have been the distance of a full car length, I realized something. There was no reflection on the wet road. The lights weren't bouncing off anything. They weren't coming from a car at all. They were just hanging there. Then the radio on my shoulder hissed again. This time it wasn't a voice, it was breathing. Slow, wet, and uneven, like someone struggling through water. I froze. My flashlight flickered. And then, under that breathing, a whisper. "Can you see them too?" I spun around, searching the fog behind me. Nothing but gray. "Who is this?" I demanded. "Show yourself." No reply, only that faint humming sound. The same warped him, drifting through the fog. I turned back toward the lights. They were closer now. I hadn't seen them move, but they were closer, maybe 20 feet away. My chest tightened. I backed up slowly, keeping my flashlight trained on them. The light trembled in my hand. Then the beams flared, so bright it burned to my vision, and the radio screamed. Not static, not music. Voices, dozens of them, layered over one another, whispering and crying and shouting all at once. I dropped the mic, covering my ears. The noise drilled straight into my skull. "Help me? It's in the fog. Don't look. Please, God." And then, just like that, it stopped. The lights were gone. The fog swallowed them whole, and the night fell silent again. I stood there for what felt like forever, my heartbeat the only sound I could trust. Then, from somewhere deep in the fog, I heard it, a single car door closing. Soft, distant. I shined my flashlight toward the sound, but it was useless. That's when I realized I could smell something. Gasoline. I turned around fast and saw that my cruiser's engine light was blinking. The hood was slightly open. I hadn't left it that way. I climbed back in, hands shaking, and tried the ignition. It coughed once, then died. The radio stayed dead too, but the faint static still came through the speakers, even though the power was off. I sat there, gripping the wheel, staring at the empty highway ahead. I couldn't see more than 10 feet out. Then something lit up in the fog again. Not 2 lights this time, 4. Headlights lined up side by side, stretching across the entire road, all of them facing me. I blinked, heart pounding. It was impossible. The road wasn't wide enough for 4 cars. And yet, there they were, perfectly spaced, perfectly still. I could feel the hum in my chest now, vibrating through the seat, through the steering column, through my bones. I wanted to run, reverse, anything, but my body wouldn't listen. Then the voices came back, softer now, almost melodic. Drive, they whispered. My fingers twitched against the gear shift. Drive, they said again, louder. The fog outside began to swirl. Shapes moving just beyond the reach of the lights. Shadows of people. Thin, wavering outlines like smoke. Faces half-formed in the mist. They drifted toward the car, reaching out with long, pale hands. Drive. The voices hissed together. And before I knew it, my foot slammed on the gas. The cruiser roared to life, tires squealing as I shot forward, straight into the lights. For a split second, everything went white. No road, no fog, no sound, just light. Then I was through. The headlights vanished, and I was speeding down an empty stretch of highway, the fog thinning behind me. The radio clicked back on. Collins. It was dispatch. You copy? You've been off radar for over an hour. Where are you? I swallowed hard, trying to catch my breath. My watch said 12:47. I'd left the station at 9. Still on 47, I said, though my voice sounded strange. Fog's thick. Radio interference. I'm heading back. Copy that, she said, relieved. Be careful. We've been getting strange feedback from your channel, like overlapping transmissions. You might want to have your unit checked. Yeah, I whispered. I'll do that. I didn't tell her what I'd seen. When I finally pulled into the station lot, I climbed out and checked the front of the cruiser. No dents, no impact, no sign of anything. But the headlights, they were dimmer than before, like they'd been drained. I told myself I was done with Highway 47. I'd file my report and keep clear until the fog cleared for good. But when I looked in the rearview mirror before heading inside, I froze. There was something faint, glowing in the distance down the road. 2 pale lights, slowly drifting toward the station. They weren't headlights this time. They were eyes, and they were looking straight at me. By the third night, Highway 47 didn't even feel like a real place anymore. The fog still hung there, same thickness, same silence, but something about it had changed. The air felt wrong, heavier, like the road itself was holding its breath. After what happened with the lights, the sheriff ordered me to stay off that stretch, said it was just a weather anomaly, that I needed rest, but I couldn't let it go. I kept thinking about those voices, about the way the headlights had just appeared, and about how, when I finally got home that night, my reflection in the window didn't move at the same time I did. So yeah, I went back. This time, I wasn't alone. Deputy Ray Morris came with me. He was new, only 6 months on the job, but he'd heard the stories, the unregistered calls, the lights, the missing car. He tried to play it cool, cracking jokes as we drove, but I could tell he was uneasy. Guess we'll see your ghost highway tonight, huh? He said, tapping the GPS on the dash. Just keep your eyes on the road, I told him. The screen showed the thin gray line of Highway 47 stretching straight through the woods. One road in, one road out. Simple. But a few miles past marker 10, the line flickered. The map zoomed in and out by itself, and the blue arrow that marked our cruiser spun in circles. Ray frowned. You seeing that? I nodded. Signal must be cutting out. But deep down, I knew it wasn't the signal. The fog was thicker now, so thick the headlights bounced back off it. The trees looked like shadows pressed against the glass, their outlines bending where they shouldn't. I glanced at the clock. 10:14 p.m. We should have reached marker 15 by then, but it never came. The same broken fence appeared on our right side again and again. Ray noticed it too. Didn't we just pass that? Yeah, I said quietly. We did. He slowed the car, leaning forward to stare out the windshield. Wait, that can't be right. We've been going straight the whole time. I looked at the speedometer. 45. Steady. Turn around, I said. What? Just do it. He swung the cruiser around, tires crunching over gravel. We started back the other way. The same fog, the same trees, the same broken fence on the right side. Then, a few minutes later, the same thing again. The fence, the marker, the same sharp bend in the road we'd passed twice already. Ray let out a nervous laugh. You gotta be kidding me. But it wasn't a joke. We'd driven nearly 8 miles in both directions and nothing changed. The GPS was gone now, just a blank gray screen. The road signs had disappeared too. Every marker post we passed was empty, stripped of numbers. It was like Highway 47 had swallowed its own sense of direction. Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I said into the mic, we're out on 47. We're experiencing some kind of, I don't know, loop. Static answered me. Dispatch, do you copy? Nothing. Ray tapped his radio. You think the fog's blocking the signal? I shook my head slowly. No, it's not the fog. He stared at me. Then what? I didn't answer, because I didn't have one. We drove another 10 minutes. No intersections. No turnoffs. Not even a patch of dirt wide enough to pull over. Just the same stretch of pavement, endlessly feeding itself back to us. Ray started mumbling under his breath. Little things, like counting the seconds between each marker, tapping the steering wheel in rhythm. People do that when they're scared. They give their mind something to hold on to. After a while, he said, maybe we missed a turnoff. Could be the road split in the fog. There is no split, I said. He went quiet after that. I looked out the window and noticed something else. The trees weren't right. They all leaned slightly toward the road, like they were bending closer to watch us, and their shapes changed. Branches I swore were pointing up now curled the other way, knotted together in patterns I didn't remember passing. The deeper we drove, the less real it all felt. The fog pressed harder against the glass, until I couldn't even see the hood of the car. It was like driving inside a cloud. Then, all at once, the engine stuttered. The headlights dimmed. The radio clicked on by itself. A voice whispered through the static, low, strained, like someone trying to talk through water. You're going the wrong way. Ray slammed on the brakes. What the hell was that? He whispered. I didn't answer. I was staring at the radio, waiting for it to speak again. But the voice was gone. Just a faint buzz of white noise. Then the headlights flickered and went out completely. Darkness. Total and perfect. We sat there for a moment. The only sound our own breathing. Ray fumbled for the flashlight. And as soon as he turned it on, I saw it. Something standing in the middle of the road ahead. It was too far to make out clearly. Just a silhouette in the fog. Tall. Still. Do you see that? He whispered. Yeah. We both froze as the figure started to move. Slow, dragging steps, like its feet were heavy. Ray reached for the ignition. We're getting out of here. He turned the key, but the engine only clicked. The figure kept coming. Its shape shifted as it moved. Arms too long, head tilted too far to the side, like it was broken. Then the radio came alive again, blasting that same voice through the static. You can't leave. Ray swore under his breath and kept turning the key, over and over. Come on, come on. The lights blinked once, then stayed on. The figure was gone. I turned toward Ray. Drive? He didn't need to be told twice. The tires screeched as we tore down the road, fog whipping around us like white smoke. I glanced in the side mirror. Nothing followed us. But something in the reflection wasn't right. The road behind us didn't curve. It didn't fade. It just stretched forever. No horizon. No distance. Just endless gray. And then, after maybe 5 minutes, the same broken fence appeared again on our right. Ray slammed the steering wheel. No way. No damn way. He slowed to a crawl, shaking his head. It's like the road's folding back on itself. I leaned forward, squinting into the fog. Pull over. He hesitated. Why? Just do it. We stopped on the shoulder. The fog swirled around us like smoke rising from the ground. I opened the door, stepped out, and looked down the road. It was dead quiet. The air was thick and wet. I took out my flashlight and pointed it straight ahead. The beam just stopped, like it hit a wall. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a sound. Not the radio. Not footsteps. It was something softer. Familiar. A voice. My own. repeating the same thing I'd said the first night. County Sheriff. Anyone here? The words echoed through the fog, fading into themselves. Ray called out from the car. What's happening? I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring into that gray wall of air where my voice had come from. Something moved in it, not toward me, but sideways, like a shadow pacing behind a curtain. I stepped back, shaking. We're leaving. Now. We drove fast this time, too fast for visibility. But I didn't care. I just needed to be anywhere else. After maybe 15 minutes, we saw a sign through the fog. Welcome to Mill Creek. Relief hit like a wave. We'd made it back, but as we got closer, my stomach dropped. The sign wasn't right. The paint was faded, the letters warped, and the number beneath the town name, population 3,218, had been scratched out. Underneath in black marker, someone had written, "Stay on the road." Ray slowed down, staring. That wasn't there before. I didn't say anything. He looked at me. You seeing this? I nodded slowly. Yeah, and it means we're still on 47. Because the town sign faced the wrong direction. It was meant to be seen coming into Mill Creek. But we were leaving. The road curved behind us, looping back into the same fog that never ended. Ray just kept driving, eyes wide, knuckles white on the wheel, and in the side mirror, I watched the fog follow us, rolling, shifting, breathing, like it was waiting for us to realize there is no way off Highway 47. Ray was gone by morning, not gone like took the day off, gone like vanished. His cruiser was found parked outside his apartment. Driver's door still open, engine cold. His radio was on the passenger seat, hissing softly, like it had been waiting for someone to answer. They said he must have walked out sometime before dawn, but nobody saw him leave. And that was the part that didn't make sense. He lived on the 3rd floor. The security camera by the stairwell never picked up a thing. The sheriff called it stress. Said Ray had probably gone AWOL after what we'd seen on the highway. People crack, he told me. Especially rookies. But Ray wasn't that kind of guy. He joked too much, drank too much coffee, never shut up about how proud his mom was that he'd made deputy. He didn't just vanish, not without saying goodbye. I tried not to think about it, but the silence in the station made it impossible. It felt heavier that day. Every radio crackle made my chest tighten. Every open channel felt like something waiting to speak. By nightfall, the fog was back. It rolled in slow, pushing against the windows like it was testing them. I told myself I wouldn't go out again. Not tonight. Not after losing Ray. But when the radio on my desk came alive, I didn't even hesitate. The voice was faint, buried under static. Help, please? I can't see. Then a scream. The kind that doesn't sound human at first. Too raw, too long. I grabbed the mic. This is Deputy Collins. Who is this? Identify yourself. No answer. I replayed the frequency log. It wasn't a random broadcast. It came from a unit radio, a deputy's frequency, and it was Ray's. The timestamp showed it had come through less than 30 seconds ago. Before I knew it, I was in the cruiser, heading back toward Highway 47. The fog was already thick, crawling low across the asphalt like smoke from an invisible fire. My hands were slick on the wheel. My heartbeat was so loud, I almost didn't hear the radio come back. Collins, it was him, Ray. I gripped the mic, so hard it hurt. Ray, where are you? Can you hear me? His breathing came through, heavy and ragged. I don't know. The road, it's not right. It just keeps turning. Listen to me, I said. Stay where you are. Don't move. No, he whispered. It moves when I stop. The radio crackled, then died. I slammed the gas, headlights slicing through the gray. But the more I drove, the less I recognized anything. The signs were gone again. The mile markers, too. Just the fog. Endless and alive. I tried the mic again. Ray, I'm coming to get you. Flash your lights if you see me. Static, then a faint voice under it. Not as this time. Stop looking. I froze. Who is this? No answer. I slowed the cruiser, scanning the tree line. The fog was thicker there, swirling, folding it on itself like something breathing. Then I saw a movement, a shadow cutting across the mist. I slammed the brakes and threw the door open. Ray! My flashlight beam caught the edge of the road, muddy tire tracks leading into the trees. His tracks. I followed them. The moment I stepped off the asphalt, the fog swallowed everything. The cruiser disappeared behind me, its headlights fading into the gray. The air was colder in the woods. Quiet, but not empty. There was a sound underneath the silence, a soft, rhythmic pulse, like distant breathing. I kept following the tracks until they stopped at a ditch filled with water. That's where I found the first sign of him, his badge half buried in the mud. Ray! I called out. The only reply was the radio on my shoulder hissing back to life. Collins! His voice was shaking. It's so dark. I can hear them. Who? I whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then they sound like us. The line went dead again. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the fog. That's when I heard it, a faint echo of my own voice, repeating the same words I just said. Who? It came from deeper in the woods. I started backing up, but the ground behind me was soft, sucking at my boots. Then the radio clicked again, loud enough to make me flinch. But it wasn't Ray anymore. It was laughter, my laughter, playing through the static, warped and slowed, like a recording being dragged backward. I ripped the radio off my shoulder and threw it into the ditch. The sound didn't stop. It just got louder. The fog around me pulsed with each laugh, as if it was echoing from the air itself. And then I heard him again. Ray, closer this time. Collins. I turned toward the sound and saw a light moving through the trees, a flashlight beam, jerking left and right. Ray! I shouted. The light froze. Then it started coming toward me fast. Too fast. Branches snapped, leaves rustled. But there were no footsteps. Just the sound of something sliding over the ground. I backed up, shaking. Ray! When the light reached the edge of the fog, I saw a shape holding it. A figure. But it wasn't him. The hand around the flashlight wasn't human. It was pale, jointed wrong, bending in too many places. I ran. The light chased me, cutting through the fog like a blade. Every time it flashed behind me, I saw more of them, shapes moving between the trees, their faces pale and blurred. And from the radio ditch, the laughter kept going. I don't know how long I ran before I hit the road again. The cruiser was there, engine still running, headlights barely cutting through the mist. I threw myself inside and locked the doors. The laughter stopped. For a second, there was silence. Then, faint, almost gentle, a voice came through the radio speaker. Collins. I didn't answer. Don't leave me again. It was Ray. I forced myself to pick up the mic. Tell me where you are. Static. Then, right behind you. My blood ran cold. I turned slowly, staring into the rear-view mirror. Nothing. Just fog pressing against the back window. Then the glass fog from the inside. A single word written across it in a shaking hand. Stay. I hit the gas. The cruiser shot forward, tires screeching, the words smearing across the glass as I sped down the endless highway. But the fog didn't let me go. It followed, thickening until I couldn't tell if I was moving at all. The road stretched forever, looping like it always did. And from somewhere in that gray sea behind me, the radio screamed, not words this time, just pain. Ray's voice, distorted and distant, breaking apart into static and breath. Help, please, it's here. The sound cut out mid-sentence. Then came the echo, dozens of voices, all overlapping. Some I recognized, some I didn't. They said the same thing, over and over. Help me, please, it's here. Every voice was Ray's, every single one. I drove until the fog thinned enough for me to see the faint glow of the station lights. When I got out, my legs barely worked. My hands were trembling. So bad, I dropped the mic on the way inside. Dispatch looked up as I came through the door. Collins, you look like hell. We've been trying to reach you for hours. Your radio kept transmitting. I froze. Transmitting what? She turned her screen toward me. The log showed over 100 audio clips sent from my unit in the last hour. each labeled with my badge number. She played one. Static, then my voice whispering, "Please don't leave me." She looked at me. "You sound terrified." I didn't know what to say. When I finally went back to my cruiser, I found the badge I'd picked up earlier sitting on the passenger seat. Ray's badge, but it wasn't wet anymore. It was clean, polished, like it had just been issued, and underneath it, scratched into the metal dash, were 3 words: "Stay on road." Now, every time I close my eyes, I hear the radio crackle again. Sometimes it's him calling for help. Sometimes it's me. By sunrise, the fog was gone. The sky was pale and empty, like nothing had ever happened. The air smelled clean, too clean, and the road ahead stretched straight and harmless, lined with trees that looked ordinary again. If you had driven past that morning, you'd never know what had been there a few hours before. You'd never guess a man had vanished into that gray wall. You'd never know the sound of his voice still echoed in my head. Ray was just gone. The sheriff organized a search that morning. Dozens of us combed to the woods, calling his name until our throats were raw. We found boot prints that led nowhere, tire tracks that ended mid-road, and a single glove by the ditch that looked too clean to have been out all night. But no Ray, not a trace of him. When the sun climbed high enough, the heat settled in heavy. The fog had burned away completely, leaving the whole highway washed in gold. Birds started singing again. The radio static stopped. Everything was normal. That was the worst part. How normal it all felt. Because I knew what I'd heard. I knew what I'd seen. But when I tried to talk about it, nobody believed me. The sheriff told me my brain had filled in the blanks. Stress does strange things, he said. Fog can mess with depth perception. And sound travels weird out there. Sound travels weird. That's what he said. Like that explained the laughter. Like that explained the voice on the radio, whispering my name. I didn't argue. I just nodded, signed a report, and went home. But that night, when I tried to sleep, I could still hear it. The faint hiss of the radio. That broken voice saying, "Don't leave me." I thought I was losing my mind. When I came back to the station the next day, Ray's locker was empty. His badge, his jacket, even his nameplate, all gone. Who cleared this out? I asked. The sheriff looked confused. Cleared what out? I pointed. Ray's stuff. His locker's empty. He frowned. "Collins, there's never been a Deputy Ray on this roster." I laughed at first. Thought he was joking. But when I checked the system, there was no record of him. Not on payroll, not on the shift list. Nothing. It was like he'd never existed. Even his cruiser, Unit 12, was reassigned. Same vehicle, new number. No trace of his name anywhere. I sat there staring at the records until the words started to blur. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I told dispatch about the radio calls, she swore she'd never heard any. "You were the only one transmitting that night," she said. "You must have been picking up interference." But the timestamp, I'd seen it. The transmission had come through from his ID. Now it was gone. All the logs from that night were wiped. I started to think maybe the fog had done something to me. Maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing. But then I remembered the badge, the one I found in the ditch. I'd left it in my glove compartment. When I checked that morning, it wasn't there. In its place was a folded slip of paper, old and yellowed, like it had been sitting there for years. On it was written a single sentence: "Stay on road." Same handwriting as before. I don't know why, but that broke me. I slammed the glove box shut and drove until my hand stopped shaking. I didn't even know where I was going. I just needed to get away from that highway. But no matter how far I drove, I kept ending up back there. Highway 47, the same stretch of asphalt, the same mile markers. I passed the old gas station 3 times, even though I'd turned off twice. By the 4th pass, the lights were out and the windows were boarded up. That gas station had been open yesterday. I pulled over and just sat there for a while, staring at the empty road. The trees on either side barely moved. Even though the wind had picked up, the whole place felt like a photograph. Frozen, too still to be real. Then I noticed something. My reflection in the rear view mirror. There was something off about it. My face looked wrong. like it was a half second behind my movements. When I blinked, it didn't. I turned the mirror up, so I didn't have to see it anymore. When I finally made it back to town, the roads were full again, commuters, trucks, noise, sunlight. Everything looked normal, but nobody remembered the fog. Not a single person. I asked dispatch if they'd gotten any other calls that night. She said no. Fog? On Highway 47? It's been clear all week. I even checked the weather logs. Clear. Perfect visibility. No mention of fog. That was the first time I realized it wasn't just Ray that had been erased. It was everything. The more I tried to remember the details, the more they slipped away. What day it had happened. What time. Even what he looked like started to blur in my head. It's been a week now, and I can't picture his face anymore. I tried sketching it once, but the pencil wouldn't move right. I'd start with his eyes, and halfway through it would just change, like my brain refused to finish it. Every time I drive past the turnoff for Highway 47, I feel it. That pull. The air gets colder. The road seems quieter. And for a few seconds, I swear I can see it again. The faint shimmer of fog way down the line, like a curtain waiting to drop. I haven't told anyone. I've stopped trying to. The last deputy, I mentioned it, just stared at me and said, "What highway?" I thought he was joking, too, but he wasn't. He'd never heard of Highway 47. I checked the county map after that. It's not there anymore. Just a blank space between Route 19 and the old quarry road, like someone erased it clean. But I remember it. I know it was real. I can still hear the gravel crunching under my boots, the fog pressing against my skin, the radio whispering through the static. Sometimes, late at night, I'll turn my scanner on and let it hum in the dark. Most nights, it's quiet, just background noise. But once in a while, I hear something else. Not words, just breathing. Slow, shallow breaths, like someone sitting right next to Mike, afraid to speak. Last night, it said my name again. I froze. The voice was low, familiar, broken. Collins. It sounded like him. Like Ray. "Where are you?" I whispered. The static crackled, then cleared. I stayed. That's all he said. Then silence. I kept the radio on for hours, waiting for him to say something else. But he didn't. And when I looked out the window this morning, there was fog again, thin, low, clinging to the road outside my house. It wasn't supposed to be foggy today, but it's there. And I swear when I looked at it long enough, I saw something move inside it. Headlights. 2 faint orbs glowing in the gray. No car behind them. Just the lights, just like before. I can't tell anymore if I'm remembering or reliving it. Every time I try to talk about that night, it feels further away, like the memory is dissolving into something else. But the fear never fades. It stays sharp, real. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know what the fog took from me. Everyone else might have forgotten Highway 47, but I haven't. It's still out there, waiting. And sometimes, when the night's quiet and the radio starts to hum again, I think it's waiting for me, too. It started with a call. Not just any call. The kind that gets under your skin before you even pick up the radio. The kind where you know something's wrong before a single word comes through. It was just past midnight. The station was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only person left awake in the world. The clock on the wall ticked too loud. The coffee had gone cold hours ago. I was flipping through old case files when the radio crackled to life. At first, it was just static, soft, broken, like wind pushing through the trees. Then came the voice. "Please, someone's out there." It was a woman. Her voice was sharp, frantic. She was breathing hard, like she'd been running. I grabbed the mic. "Ma'am, this is Sheriff Dalton. Can you tell me where you are?" More static. Then between the crackles, the old Wexler Mill. "Please hurry. They're screaming." I sat up straight. That place hadn't been used in over 30 years. The Wexler Mill was the kind of name folks around town only said to scare kids. Old stories about accidents, about people hearing things in the dark. But no one went there. Not anymore. "Ma'am, who's screaming? Are you safe?" No response. Just a faint thump, like something heavy hitting the floor. Then her voice again, lower this time. "They're in the walls. The line went dead. I just sat there for a moment, staring at the radio, listening to the hiss of static filling the silence. Then I grabbed my keys. The Wexler Mill was 15 minutes out, down a dirt road off County 6. I radioed for backup, but the signal was weak that far out. No response. I figured I'd get there first and assess the situation. That's what I told myself anyway. Truth was, I didn't want to wait. I wanted to see for myself who the hell was calling from that place. The drive was long and empty. The fog had rolled in thick that night, swallowing the road ahead. My headlights cut a narrow path through it, making the trees look like figures pressed up against the glass. Every few minutes, I glanced at the passenger seat. The radio sat there, silent now, like it was listening too. When I finally saw the mill, my stomach tightened. It stood at the end of gravel drive, half collapsed and covered in ivy. The windows were black and hollow, like eye sockets. The air smelled like damp wood and rust. I parked by the main gate, which hung half open, swinging in the wind. My boots crunched over broken glass as I stepped out. Sheriff's Department. I called out. My voice echoed against the metal siding, then faded. Nothing, just the sound of water dripping somewhere inside. I tried the radio again. Dispatch! This is Sheriff Dalton. I'm at the Wexler Mill investigating a possible disturbance. Do you copy? Static. The signal was gone again. That's when I noticed the footprints. Fresh in the dirt, small, barefoot, leading straight through the gate and into the building. I followed. The air inside was colder. Every sound seemed to crawl up the walls before dying in the rafters. My flashlight beam caught bits of old machinery, piles of wood, scraps of metal, then something else. A handprint on the wall. It was small, smeared in something dark, dry but recent. Hello. I called again, softer this time. Somewhere deeper in the mill, something creaked, like a door opening just slightly. I followed the sound through a narrow hallway lined with rotted boards. Every step made the floor groan beneath me. The air felt thick now, wrong, like the whole building was holding its breath. Then I heard it, so faint I almost thought it was in my head. A woman's voice, whispering, "Help me." I spun toward the sound. The beam of my flashlight trembled across the walls, landing on a half-open door. The break room. I pushed it open slowly. The smell hit first, damp and metallic. The light flickered over a small table, an old radio sitting on top of it, the kind they used to use for internal comms. It was on, faint static buzzing from its speaker. Then it spoke. Sheriff Dalton. I froze. That was my name. But it wasn't a woman's voice anymore. It was a man's. Deep, hollow. Sheriff Dalton, you came. The words crawled to the static, like they were being dragged out of a well. I took a step back. Who is this? No answer. Then the radio popped again, sharp and loud. For a split second, I heard the woman scream. Not through the air, through the radio. It sounded close, like she was right there in the room with me. I slammed my hand down on the power switch, but the radio didn't shut off. The light behind the dial glowed red, the sound distorting into a low, guttural moan. Stop. I muttered, just stop. Then, from the doorway behind me, a whisper, you shouldn't have come. I turned fast, flashlight cutting across the wall, but there was no one there, just shadows stretching across the floor. That's when the building started to groan again, louder this time. The metal walls flexed, a deep rumble echoing through the beams. I backed out into the hallway. The temperature dropped, so fast my breath came out in clouds. And for just a second, I thought I saw movement up ahead, a shape half hidden by the dark. I raised the light. Ma'am, is that you? The figure didn't move. It was small, thin, hunched over, hair hanging long and wet. I took a cautious step forward. I'm here to help you, okay? Just tell me what happened. The figure lifted its head, but there was no face, just darkness. My flashlight flickered once, then went out. I could hear my own breathing, loud in the dark. The radio behind me started hissing again. Then click. The flashlight came back. The hallway was empty. The footprints on the floor were gone. And when I looked down, the dirt and dust that had been there seconds ago was clean, like it had never been disturbed. I didn't think. I just ran. By the time I got back outside, the air had warmed again. The fog had lifted. My cruiser sat where I'd left it, engine ticking softly. I slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the mic. "Dispatch," this is Sheriff Dalton. "I need immediate backup at the Wexler Mill. Possible missing person. Do you copy?" A pause. Then, finally, a voice came through. "Sheriff, we've got you. But what mill?" I blinked. Wexler Mill, the old plant off County 6. Another pause. Longer this time. "Sheriff," the dispatcher said slowly, "that building burned down in 97. My throat went dry. "What?" "It's gone," she said. "It's been gone for years." I didn't answer. I just stared out the windshield at the building in front of me, the windows, the rust, the way the light hit the walls. It was right there. But when I looked down at my radio again, the signal light flickered once and died. And through the silence, just before it cut out completely, I heard her voice one last time. "Please, don't leave me here." I drove back to town without looking in the mirror. I never told anyone what I saw that night. Not the sheriff, not the deputies, not even my wife. Because every time I try to talk about it, I start hearing the static again. And deep inside it, I can still hear my name. They sent me back the next night. I told them I didn't want to go. I said there was something wrong with that place, that I'd heard a woman's voice calling for help. But the sheriff just gave me that look he always gives when he thinks I've lost my edge. "You said it yourself, Dalton," he told me. "You didn't find anyone. Probably just trespassers. We'll go check it out together this time." So that's what we did. 2 cruisers rolled down the dirt road toward the old Wexler Mill just after dark. The same fog hung over the trees, low and gray, like it hadn't moved since last night. Deputy Keller was driving behind me. He was younger, the kind who thought the world still made sense if you followed the rules. I envied that about him. When we reached the gate, it was still hanging open, creaking the wind. "Guess no one's come out to lock it," Keller said over the radio, trying to sound calm. I didn't answer, because the moment I saw that gate, I remembered the footprints, the handprint on the wall, the voice saying my name through the radio. And I swear, the air felt colder the second I stepped out of the cruiser. The sheriff led the way in. He carried a flashlight and kept his hand near his holster, though none of us really knew what we were expecting to find. The metal siding of the mill groaned in the wind, and the smell of rust and oil drifted through the air. Every breath tasted like dust and iron. "Looks empty," Keller said. "Yeah," I muttered, shining my light across the walls. That's what it looked like last night, too. We walked through the front door, what was left of it, and into the main hall. The floorboards were warped from years of water damage. Every step echoed through the space, sharp and hollow. My light swept across the machinery. Big rusted gears, conveyor belts split and sagging. The old control panel still had switches labeled in faded white paint. "Mill line A, feed grinder, safety lock." Everything was still, but it didn't feel still. The shadows didn't sit right. I don't know how to explain it. They moved even when our lights weren't. At first, I thought it was just a fog outside creeping through cracks. But when Keller walked past one of the big machines, his shadow stretched the wrong way, up the wall, like it was climbing instead of falling. He stopped when he saw my face. "What?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "Keep moving." I didn't want to spook him. Didn't want to admit I was seeing it again. The sheriff checked the main control room while we fanned out along the factory floor. That's when I noticed it. The sound, a low creak, slow and steady, like metal bending under weight. "Keller," I whispered, "you hear that?" He nodded, frowning. "Yeah, sounds like it's coming from the grinder line." We followed the noise of the maze of old pipes and beams. The further we went, the darker it got. My flashlight felt weak against the blackness, like the air itself was swallowing the light. When we reached the source, the sound stopped. There was a large piece of machinery there, an old roller press. Its gears were black with rust. No power, no movement, but I could still hear the faint ticking of metal cooling down. like it had just been running. That's impossible, Keller said. I didn't answer. Something flickered on the wall beside us. A shadow, but there was nothing to cast it. It shifted, long and thin, stretching out like fingers reaching across the concrete. Keller didn't see it. He was staring at the machine, trying to figure out where the noise was coming from. I grabbed his arm. We're leaving. What? Why? Because something's wrong here. Before he could argue, the grinder belt behind him started moving. The gears groaned and spat dust, the rollers turning slow and uneven, like something deep inside had woken up. The sheriff's voice came through the radio, sharp and crackling. Dalton, Keller, you two hearing that? Affirmative, I said, my voice shaking. The machinery is running somehow. No power. There was a pause. Then the sheriff said, Stay put, I'm coming to you. But I wasn't waiting. The belt kept spinning, faster now. The gears rattling like teeth grinding against each other. And in the noise, I swear I heard something else. A voice, faint, drowned beneath the metal. Help me? I turned off my radio. The sound didn't stop. It was coming from inside the machine. Keller took a step closer, holding his flashlight over the rollers. There's something jammed in there. I reached out to stop him, but he was already leaning in. He brushed away a layer of dust and froze. Jesus Christ, he whispered. It wasn't debris. It was fabric, a torn scrap of denim, caught between the gears, and underneath it, what looked like skin. I yanked him back. Don't touch it. The machine groaned again. The gears shifted once, then stopped completely. The shadow on the wall behind us rippled, twisting into something long and bent. For a moment, it looked like a person leaning out from the corner. But when I turned, there was nothing there, just darkness. Then the lights above us, old, broken fluorescents that shouldn't have worked, flickered on. All at once, the entire mill came alive. Every machine, every belt, every light flickering and buzzing like they'd never been shut off. The noise was deafening. Keller shouted something I couldn't hear. The sheriff's voice was yelling over the radio, asking what the hell was happening. And through it all, the shadows moved, sliding across the walls, breaking apart, stretching, merging again. They weren't following the light anymore. They were moving on their own. I ran. The metal catwalk shook under my boots, each step echoing in time with the pounding of the machines. Keller was right behind me, panting, yelling my name. We burst through the side door into the cold night air. The sound of machinery cut off the instant we stepped outside. Just silence. We stood there, bent over, catching our breath. The sheriff came running out a few seconds later, flashlight swinging. What the hell happened in there? He demanded. Keller just stared at him, pale as a sheet. It turned on, sir. Everything. No power, but it was running. The sheriff looked between us. Then back at the mill. That's not possible. Yeah, I muttered, staring at the dark windows. Tell that to shadows. He followed my gaze. What shadows? I didn't answer, because even as I watched, the last light in the mill flickered once, then went out, but the reflection of it stayed. In the window, I could still see our three silhouettes standing there, even though none of us were moving. Then one of them turned its head. Not us, the reflection. Keller saw it too. He cursed under his breath and stumbled back toward the cruiser. We didn't speak on the drive back. None of us did. When we reached the station, the sheriff made us file a report. I told him what I'd seen. The fabric, the movement, the voices. He didn't write that part down. He just said, probably wind through the vents. Loose wiring. You've been running yourself too hard, Dalton. But I know what I saw. That mill wasn't empty. It was awake. Later that night, I sat in my kitchen with the radio on low, trying not to think about it. Then, around 3 a.m., the signal shifted. Soft static, faint at first, and under it, that same voice. Help me. I froze. Then it said my name. Dalton. The sound came from somewhere deep inside the static. Familiar, but wrong. And just before the radio went dead, I heard it again. That slow, grinding creak of metal. The sound of the mill turning back on. I didn't plan on going back to the Wexler mill. Not after what happened with the machines. And those shadows that didn't move right. But some places don't let you walk away. They stick to you like dust in your lungs. The sheriff called it follow-up procedure. Said we'd miss a section of the lower floor. Something about old tunnels used to store grain or run off water. I knew it wasn't about procedure. He wanted to prove the place was safe. Wanted to believe the mill wasn't haunted by whatever we felt there that night. He took Keller and me back at noon, when the sun was bright and the fog was gone. But somehow, the air still felt dim. Even in daylight, the shadows around that building looked thicker, like the light didn't want to touch it. The sheriff forced a grin. "Let's make this quick," he said. "We clear the basement. We're done." I nodded, though I kept my hand on my flashlight. Keller looked tired. He hadn't been sleeping well. None of us had. Inside, the air smelled like rotten iron. The machine sat quiet again, like they'd gone back to pretending. The silence pressed on my ears until even our footsteps sounded too loud. We found the entrance of the tunnel behind a warped storage door, half covered in dust and mold. Someone had boarded it shut decades ago. Keller pried the wood off with a crowbar, each pull echoing through the hall like a gunshot. Behind it was a narrow staircase, descending into a black throat of air. I shined my light down. Concrete walls, slick with moisture. The smell down there was heavy, earthy, like wet grain left to rot. "Basement, my ass," Keller muttered. "This looks like a bunker." The sheriff went first. Keller followed. I took the rear. Each step down felt softer than the last, like the ground didn't want to hold us. When we reached the bottom, our flashlights cut through a narrow hallway lined with thick wooden beams. The ceiling dripped condensation. The walls were carved rough, not built, like someone had just dug straight into the dirt. The sheriff's voice was calm, but low. "Watch your footing. These tunnels are old." We moved slow. The air grew warmer, then colder again. It was strange, like the temperature shifted depending on where you stood. I noticed something carved into one of the beams, a set of initials burned deep into the wood. E.W. "Elias Wexler," Keller whispered. "The owner," the sheriff grunted. "Probably workers marking territory. Let's keep moving." But I couldn't shake the feeling that those initials weren't carved by him. They were carved for him, like a grave marker. The tunnel forked ahead. Two paths, one to the left, one to the right. The sheriff pointed us toward the left. "Stay close." The floor was littered with old sacks of grain, some torn open. The kernels inside were black and soft, rotted into dust. When Keller stepped on one, it made a faint crunch like brittle bone. That's when I heard it. A whisper, soft like the scrape of wind through dry wheat. At first, I thought it came from behind me. I turned, shining my light down the tunnel we'd come from. But there was nothing there, just the echo of dripping water. Then Keller stopped walking. "Did you hear that?" The sheriff sighed. "Probably air vents." "No," Keller said. "It said something. My name, I think." I frowned. "You sure?" He nodded slowly. His flashlight trembled just a bit. The sheriff pushed forward, but my gut told me to stop. The whispering was back, clearer this time. Only now, it didn't sound like wind. It sounded like a person. Keller, his light jerked toward the sound. "Who's there?" The voice didn't answer, but we could hear it moving, sliding along the wall like it was inside the dirt itself. The sheriff tightened his grip on the flashlight. "If someone's down here, identify yourself." No response, only the sound of breathing, faint and wet, echoing through the grain sacks. Then, a few feet ahead, something shifted in the dark. The beam of my flashlight caught on a torn sack hanging open, its contents spilling out onto the floor. Except it wasn't grain. Not anymore. The kernels were mixed with something else, something gray and brittle. I crouched closer and realized they were bones. Tiny fragments, smooth and round, like finger joints. Keller gagged. "What the hell?" The sheriff cut him off. "We're leaving. Now." But when we turned to head back, the tunnel behind us looked different. The walls seemed tighter, closer. I swear they were breathing. The whispering grew louder. And this time, I heard my own name. Dalton. I froze. The sound came from the right tunnel, the one we hadn't taken. The sheriff grabbed my arm. "Don't." but I couldn't help it. That voice, there was something familiar about it. It sounded like my father. He'd been gone 15 years. Heart attack in his sleep. But I knew that voice. I'd grown up hearing it yell across fields, rough and warm and real. Dalton, it said again, soft now. Down here. Keller looked at me, pale. Who is that? I didn't answer. I just started walking toward the sound. The sheriff barked something behind me, but it was muffled far away. The tunnel seemed to stretch, pulling me in. The walls pulsed faintly, like veins under thin skin. My light flickered, and for a second I saw shapes in the dirt. Faces pressed into the walls, mouths open like they were trying to scream. I kept walking. The whisper was constant now, but it wasn't my father anymore. It was shifting, changing tones. A woman's voice, a child's, sometimes both. They were saying things I hadn't told anyone. Why didn't you help her? I stopped cold. That one wasn't random. It was my sister's voice. She drowned when we were kids. I was there, too far to reach her in time. I turned the flashlight off. For a moment, I stood in the dark, shaking. The whispers swirled around me, soft and close. You left me, they breathed. You let me die. I pressed my hand to my ears, but the sound didn't stop. It was inside me now, vibrating in my teeth, my chest. Something touched my shoulder. I turned, swinging the light. No one was there, but the dirt behind me had shifted, like someone had pressed their hand into it and dragged downward, leaving deep grooves. That's when Keller screamed. The sound came from somewhere down the left tunnel. The sheriff shouted his name, running toward the noise. I followed, heart pounding. When we found him, he was on his knees, staring at the wall. His flashlight lay on the ground, still shining. His lips were moving, but no words came out. Keller, I yelled, grabbing his arm. What happened? He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. His face was gray, streaked with dust. Then he whispered. It sounded like my mother. I swallowed hard. What did? He pointed at the wall. I aimed my light there. For a second, I thought I saw her, an outline faint, pressed into the dirt like a shadow caught in stone. A woman's face, eyes closed, then it sank back into the wall. Gone. Keller started crying. The sheriff hauled him to his feet, muttering, We're leaving. I don't care what's down here. We stumbled back toward the stairs. The whispering followed us, growing louder, blending together until it sounded like 100 voices whispering through the grain. Some of them called my name, some called Keller's, and some were laughing. When we reached the steps, Keller refused to move. He just stood there, staring at the tunnel behind us. It's still calling, he whispered. Forget it. I snapped. It's not real. He looked at me, eyes wide and wet. Then why does it sound like me? The sheriff shoved him up the stairs. We didn't look back. When we finally got outside, the sunlight felt wrong. Too bright, too clean. Keller threw up behind his cruiser. The sheriff didn't speak for a long time. We sealed the door shut again before we left. He told the town council later that the tunnels were unsafe, full of mold and bad air, so we closed the whole area off. But I know what I heard down there. Those weren't echoes. They weren't tricks of the air. They were voices that knew us, voices that remembered. And some nights, when the wind picks up and moves through the trees just right, I can still hear them whispering. Not from the mill, from under it, calling my name, waiting for me to come back. We shouldn't have gone back down there. The sheriff said it was a quick sweep, just to make sure no one else had broken in after we sealed the tunnels. But the truth was, none of us believed it was over. That mill still had its claws in us, buried somewhere deep. The three of us, me, Keller, and the sheriff, stood in front of that warped door again. The boards we'd nailed across it were split right down the center, like something had pushed from the other side. Keller said it first. That wasn't like that before. The sheriff didn't answer. He just clicked on his flashlight and muttered, Let's get this done. Inside, it felt colder. Not the kind of cold that chills your skin. This one sat in your chest, heavy like grief. The air was still, thick with the smell of damp wood and iron. Every footstep echoed too long. The sheriff led the way, stepping through the hall of dead machines. The same ones that had hummed and twitched on their own a few nights back. I could have sworn I saw one of the belts shift, just barely as we passed. Keller was behind me. I could hear his breathing, fast, uneven, still thinking about the voices. I asked quietly. He nodded. They sounded like my mom. You can't fake something like that, Dalton. You just can't. Before I could answer, the sheriff's radio crackled. A burst of static, sharp and violent, filled the silence. We froze. Then a voice, distorted, broken by the interference, came through. Help me. The sheriff frowned. This is Sheriff Brooks. Identify yourself. More static. Then, clear as day, downstairs. Keller and I locked eyes. That voice, it sounded like him. Like Keller. But Keller was standing right next to me. The sheriff hesitated, then said, "Let's move. Might be a trapped vagrant." He didn't sound convinced. Neither of us did. The steps down to the tunnels felt steeper this time, like the whole building had shifted. When we reached the bottom, our flashlights flickered all at once. Keller smacked his light, muttering under his breath. The tunnels looked different. The beams weren't straight anymore. They curved slightly inward, bending like ribs around us. The sheriff led us deeper. The air felt charged, humming faintly in my ears. After a few minutes, we reached a cross-section where the tunnel split into three. The sheriff stopped, checking his map. "The mill's plans only show 2 branches," he said. "This middle one wasn't here before." Keller whispered, "It changes." I wanted to tell him to stop, but he wasn't wrong. The walls looked fresh, like the dirt had just been dug. Still damp. The sheriff started down the center tunnel. We followed, though I could feel something behind us, breathing in time with my steps. About 50 feet in, Keller's radio came alive. Not with voices this time, with laughter. It was faint at first, then louder, mocking, distorted. We all stopped walking. The sound filled the tunnel, bouncing off the walls. It wasn't human. It was imitating human. Too perfect, too exaggerated, like someone remembering what laughter was supposed to sound like. The sheriff hissed into his mic. "Who's transmitting? This is a secure channel." But the laughter only grew. Then, beneath it, a voice whispered, "We see you." Keller ripped his radio off his belt and threw it against the wall. The plastic cracked, but the laughter didn't stop. It was still coming through, clear, sharp, circling around us like it was inside the tunnel itself. I looked back toward where we'd come from and froze. The passage was gone. Just a solid wall of packed dirt. I reached out, pressed my hand to it. "Cold, real, Sheriff," I said quietly. "We're sealed in." He turned, shining his light. The beam hit the wall, and his face went pale. He started to dig, clawing at it with his hands. The dirt came away in thick chunks, but for every handful he tore loose, more filled in from above, like the tunnel was breathing us in. Keller backed away, shaking his head. "It wants us here." "Shut up," the sheriff snapped. "Nobody move. We're going to think this through." But the air was different now. Heavy. I could taste metal in the back of my throat. My flashlight beam caught faint movements in the dirt, like something shifting behind it. The laughter returned, this time through all 3 radios at once, overlapping, breaking into static. Then it stopped suddenly, and the silence after was worse. We started hearing footsteps. Not ours, someone else's, coming from deeper in the tunnel. Slow, deliberate. The sheriff raised his flashlight, but the beam barely reached 20 feet before the air seemed to swallow it. "Hello," he called out. No answer, just the sound of those steps getting closer. Keller whispered, "Is mocking us." "What do you mean?" I said. He pointed at the dirt wall we'd come from. That laughter, it wasn't random. It was us. I heard myself laughing in it. I wanted to tell him that wasn't possible, but part of me knew he was right. The tone, the way it dragged certain vowels, it had sounded like him. Then my radio crackled to life again. Not laughter this time. A voice. My own voice. "Dalton," it said. Calm. Measured. Turn around. I froze. I didn't want to. I really didn't. But my body didn't care what I wanted. I turned. The tunnel behind us looked the same. but there was something faintly glowing near the far wall, a shimmer, almost like heat above asphalt. It was moving closer. The sheriff stepped in front of me, hand on his gun. Stay behind me. The air buzzed, thick with static. Our lights dimmed, and that shimmer, it began to stretch, long limbs forming out of glow, too thin, bending wrong. And then, right before the light died completely, I saw its face. It looked like me, not perfectly, a twisted reflection. Eyes too deep, mouth too wide. But it was enough. I stumbled back, slamming into Keller. His flashlight flickered wildly, slicing through the dark in short bursts. Each flash showed something different. The dirt walls moving, the floor rippling like liquid, the sheriff's hand gripping his radio even as the speaker hissed with distorted giggles. Then everything went black. Total darkness. I couldn't even hear the sheriff's breathing anymore. Only my own heartbeat and faint laughter circling me. I reached for my radio. Sheriff? Keller? Respond. Static. Then, faintly. We're here. It sounded like the sheriff. But then Keller's voice layered over it. Then mine. All three at once. The sound built until it was deafening. And suddenly the lights snapped back on. Keller was gone. The sheriff and I stood alone in the tunnel, our flashlights cutting across empty dirt. Keller's gear lay scattered on the ground, his radio still hissing softly. God damn it, the sheriff shouted, slamming his hand against the wall. Keller. No answer. I picked up his radio. The static stopped immediately. Then, through the speaker, came a voice that made my stomach twist. Don't leave me. Keller. The sheriff's hand started to shake. He looked back the way we came, but there was still no path, only that smooth wall of earth. He whispered, almost to himself, "It's feeding off us." I asked, "What?" "Our fear," he said, voice trembling. "Every sound, every thought, it's echoing it back, using it." The air around us began to pulse again, soft at first, then louder. The laughter returned, echoing down from every direction, rising and falling like a chant. I gripped the flashlight tighter, and that's when I realized the light wasn't shining as far anymore. It was dimming, shrinking inward like something was eating it. The sheriff turned to me. "Don't listen. Don't look. Just keep your mind clear." But it was too late for that. I could hear my name again, whispered low and mocking. "Dalton, Dalton, Dalton." Then it said something new. "You never left." And suddenly, I remember the feeling from before, the weight in my chest, the smell of damp iron, the air pressing down like a lid. What if we hadn't left the tunnels last time? What if everything since then, the daylight, the drive home, the nights of silence, what was all just a mill, keeping us where it wanted? The sheriff shouted, shaking me. "Don't fade on me, son." But I couldn't answer. The walls were moving again, closing in, slow and deliberate. The radio screamed with laughter. And then, nothing, just quiet. When I woke, I was lying near the entrance to the mill. My flashlight was dead. My radio was cracked. The sheriff was gone. No sign of Keller. No sign of the blocked tunnels. It looked normal again, like nothing had ever happened. But sometimes, when I drive past a mill late at night, I swear I can still hear them, those radios deep underground. Laughter rising through the dirt, familiar voices calling my name, and somewhere in that echo, my own voice laughing back. I've worked night shift at the county emergency dispatch center for almost 6 years now. Most nights are quiet, domestic arguments, drunk drivers, the occasional lost hiker. You learn to read fear in people's voices, even through the static. But there was one call, one I still hear when a room gets too quiet. It came just past 2 a.m. mid-October. The logs call it routine wilderness distress. But that's not what it was. The line clicked, and all I heard at first was breathing. Uneven, shallow, like someone trying to hide it. 911, what's your emergency? I said, doing my usual calm tone. There was a long pause before a young man's voice whispered back. I don't know if it's an emergency yet. He sounded mid-20s, maybe. His voice trembled, but not from panic. It was more like confusion, like he was still deciding if what he felt was real. I asked where he was calling from. He said, Lake Delner campsite, the north side near the dock. That caught my attention immediately. That area had been closed since late September because of flooding. I asked if he knew that. He said quietly, "Yeah, I know. I'm not really supposed to be here." I could hear the fire crackling faintly behind him, the chirp of crickets, the soft lap of water against the shore. Everything sounded so peaceful through the line. Too peaceful. Then he whispered, "Something's been circling my camp." I remember sitting up a little straighter. "An animal?" I asked. He hesitated. "I thought so. I thought it was a deer or maybe a raccoon. But it's bigger. I saw it out there by the trees. It's just standing there, watching." I asked if he could describe it. He said, "No, I can't really see it clearly. It's just dark, like a person, but wrong. The shape's wrong." The radio room was silent, except for his voice and that faint fire. He breathed like he was afraid even the air might draw attention. I tried to keep him calm. I told him to stay near the firelight, to speak quietly but clearly. I said help was on the way, even though the nearest ranger post was over 30 minutes out. He asked, "Can I just keep you on the line?" And I said yes. Sometimes it helps people hold it together, just a voice in the dark. I typed notes while listening. His name was Eli. He said he'd come to Lake Delner to camp alone for the weekend, to clear his head after a breakup. He sounded embarrassed to admit it. He said the first night was fine, but earlier that evening, around midnight, he'd started hearing noises, twigs snapping, something brushing against a tent. He looked outside a few times, but there was nothing there. Then, around 1, he heard something breathe just outside the tent wall. He jumped out, flashlight in hand, but again, nothing, just the trees and the reflection of the fire in the lake. So he'd stayed up by the campfire, keeping it lit as he packed up his stuff. He said he was planning to leave at first light, but the longer he stayed by the fire, the more he felt watched. That word stuck with me. Watched. Do you see it now? I asked. A moment of silence. Then quietly, "Yeah." I froze. "Where?" "Across the lake." His voice was trembling now. "It's standing at the waterline, just staring." I could hear the faint pop of the fire and the hush of the wind moving through the trees. He said it wasn't moving, just standing there, right at the edge of the water. I asked if he could shine his light on it. He did. I heard him shift, the crunch of leaves, the beam flicking on, then a long pause. He whispered, "It's gone." The way he said it made something cold crawl up my neck. "Eli," I said, "get into your vehicle if you can. Lock the doors, stay on the line." He told me his car was parked down the trail, maybe 5 minutes away, but he didn't want to walk through the dark. I said, "You're safer moving than sitting still. Keep your light up and go slow." He didn't answer right away. Then softly, he said, "It's closer now." I remember the exact tone in his voice, like someone realizing a rule they've always believed in just broke. I said, "What do you mean closer?" He said, It's on this side of the lake." The fire crackled louder through the phone. He was breathing faster. "I didn't hear it move," he whispered. "It was across the water, and now it's..." He stopped. All I could hear was static, the faint hiss of wind. Then, "It's standing between the trees. I can see it when the fire pops. Every time the light flares up, it's a little closer." I could feel my own pulse now. Dispatch training tells you stay calm, but my throat was dry. I told him again to move toward his car. I stayed on the line as he started walking, leaves crunching, his breath shaking. He whispered to himself as he moved, not realizing I could still hear him. "Just keep walking. It's fine. It's not real." Then a sound came to the phone that I still can't explain. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a person. It was low, almost like a human voice, but stretched, like someone trying to speak underwater. Eli gasped. Then I heard him run. I called his name over and over. The line rustled, cracked, then steadied again. He was panting hard. "It's following me," he said. "I can hear behind me." I told him to keep his light forward. "Stay on the trail." He said he was trying, but everything looked different, like the path was shifting, like the trees were crowding closer. I could hear branches snapping near him, heavy footsteps that didn't match his pace. Then, suddenly, he screamed. The kind of scream that comes out once and leaves you shaking after. I shouted his name again, but he didn't answer, just breathing. Loud, fast. Then he whispered, "It's in front of me." I barely breathed. He said, "It's standing in the path. It's just standing there, like it was waiting." I told him not to move. I said help was almost there, even though I knew they were still 15 minutes out. He said, "It looks like me." I froze. "What do you mean, Eli?" He said, "It's me. Same jacket, same flashlight, everything. It's smiling." His voice cracked on the last word. Then the call went silent. No static, no breathing. Just gone. I sat there with the headset pressed to my ear, listening to nothing until the line finally clicked dead. When the Rangers arrived 40 minutes later, they found his camp abandoned. The fire was still burning low, his backpack half-packed. There were no footprints except his, leading halfway down the trail and stopping. They never found him. The report listed it as a missing person, likely wildlife related. But that doesn't explain what happened later. About 2 weeks after the call, the overnight operator forwarded me a voicemail that came in around 3 a.m. It was flagged as an open line. No message, just background noise. When I listened, I heard the same sounds from that night. Crickets, fire crackling, the soft lap of water. Then, faintly, a voice. It was Eli's voice. He said, "I made it to the car. It's okay now." Then the sound of a door opening, closing, engine starting, silence. I replayed it over and over, trying to convince myself it was a recording error. But each time, I noticed something new in the background. That stretched, watery voice again, closer this time, whispering something I still can't make out. I sent the file to my supervisor. He said it must have been interference. But when I went to replay it a week later, the voicemail was gone, deleted from the system. No record it ever existed. Sometimes on quiet nights, I look at the map of Lake Delner. The north side is still closed off, supposedly due to erosion, but I know that's not true. One of the rangers told me, off the record, that they found another fire pit there a few months later. Next it was a cell phone, burned but still half charged. When they powered it on, the lock screen showed a picture of the lake. You can barely see it unless you look close, but in the reflection on the water, there's a shape standing at the shore. It looks like Eli. And sometimes when I'm on dispatch at night, the phone rings and there's no caller ID. I answer and all I hear is breathing. Then a voice, soft, strange, just like his, saying, "Can you stay on the line with me?" I wasn't supposed to go back to Lake Delner. Officially, I didn't. The report said I was just coordinating from the dispatch office the night the investigation team went out. But that's not true. I went because I couldn't stop thinking about that call. For weeks after, I'd replay Eli's voice in my head. The way he whispered, "It looks like me." Those words kept me awake more than anything else. When the department announced they were sending a small team to survey the North Lake side, I volunteered to tag along under the excuse of communication support. They didn't argue. No one really wanted to be out there anyway. We drove out in 2 trucks, 3 rangers, 1 county investigator, and me. It was late afternoon by the time we reached the access gate. The trees were still wet from the morning rain, and the ground smelled like mud and pine needles. Lake Delner looked smaller in daylight, but somehow emptier. The surface was too still, like someone had pressed pause on it. The investigator, a woman named Harper, said we'd only be there a few hours, just enough to document the area, get photos, maybe check for any traces left behind from the missing camper. I tried to play it casual, but the second my boots hit the dirt trail, I felt that same cold pressure in my chest that I felt the night of the call, like the forest was holding its breath. We moved slow. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. Even the birds stopped calling. By the time we reached the clearing near the water, the sun was already slipping low. The light was turning gold, hitting the lake in long, broken streaks. Harper called out to one of the rangers, set up the markers near the shore. The guy nodded and moved off, stepping to the tall grass. I stayed back near the tree line, staring at the fire pit that was still there, half collapsed, filled with rainwater and ash. The ground around it was disturbed, like someone had paced in circles. I crouched beside it, tracing a hand through the dirt, and found what looked like the melted corner of a plastic bag. That was all. Then I noticed the smell. Not rot, not smoke, just something metallic, faint but wrong, like blood diluted in lake water. I stood up fast. My heart started to thud a little harder. For no reason I could explain. Harper walked over. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just thought I smelled something." She didn't answer. She was looking out across the lake. "You see that?" she said. I followed her gaze. The water was perfectly still, except for one spot, maybe 30 feet from shore, where the surface rippled outward in a tight, slow circle. At first, I thought it was a fish, but the ripples didn't fade. They just kept going, like something was just under the surface, spinning in place. The ranger came over, squinting at it. "Could be a log caught on the current," he said. Harper frowned. "There isn't a current here." We stood there watching as the circle widened. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The water went flat again. The ranger chuckled nervously. "Guess we're seeing things." But I knew we weren't, because as the sun dipped lower, the surface of the lake shifted again, this time closer. I stepped toward the water, slowly. "There," I said. "You see that?" It wasn't ripples this time. It was something floating. Small, dark, round. At first, I thought it was driftwood. Then the light hit it just right, and I realized it wasn't wood at all. It was a shoe. It spun gently toe up, like someone had dropped it moments ago. Harper motioned to the ranger to get a photo, but before he could lift the camera, the shoe sank. Just slipped under like something had pulled it. We all just stared at the spot where it disappeared. The ranger broke the silence first. "Could be caught on debris," he muttered, almost to himself. No one answered. The air felt heavier now. The sky was dimming to gray, and the trees cast long, thin shadows across the water. We moved along the shore, marking what we could. I tried to focus on the work, measurements, photos, coordinates, but every time I glanced up, I saw the water move again. Not waves, not fish, just small, deliberate motions, like the surface was breathing. At one point, Harper called me over to look at something near the dock. I walked over, and she pointed to the end of the boards. There, pressed between two planks, was a small torn piece of red fabric. I knelt to pull it free. It was part of a jacket sleeve. And I remembered Eli mentioning he'd been wearing one, red flannel, torn at the cuff. My stomach dropped. "Could be coincidence," Harper said quietly, but I could tell she didn't believe that either. As we stood there, a cold wind came off the water. It carried that same metallic smell again. Harper shivered and turned to the others. "We'll wrap up soon. Sun's almost gone." The ranger started packing up gear, and I took one last look at the lake. That's when I saw it. A pale shape just on the surface. Long, still, horizontal. My brain tried to make it a log. It wanted to, but then the light shifted, and I saw what looked like fingers, just for a moment. Then the water rippled, and it was gone. I felt my legs go weak. "There's something in the water," I said, but my voice came out too small, too shaky. Harper came beside me. "Where?" I pointed, but the surface was calm again, just dark reflections. She looked at me, skeptical, but I could tell she was uneasy. She motioned for one of the rangers to use the floodlight. He aimed the beam across the water, and for a few seconds, everything was illuminated. The trees, the ripples, the mist rising from the center of the lake. Then something broke the surface. It wasn't a person. It wasn't an animal. It was just a shape, like a head, but featureless. Smooth, gray, and wrong. The beam hit it, and I swear I saw it blink. Not eyes, just a twitch, like the surface itself moved. Then it slid silently back under. The floodlight shook in the ranger's hand. Harper swore under her breath and grabbed the radio. "We're leaving. Now." We didn't argue. We packed fast, not even talking. As we turned to go, I glanced back one last time. The water had gone still again, perfectly flat, reflecting the deep orange sky. But as we started down the trail, I heard it, a splash, then another, soft at first, like footsteps in shallow water. Following. I tried not to look back, but I did. In the fading light, something was moving just beneath the surface, keeping pace with us along the shoreline. I picked up speed without realizing it. Every few seconds, there'd be another ripple, another sound. By the time we reached the trucks, the water was calm again, as if nothing had ever moved. Harper drove. No one spoke the whole way back. When we reached the ranger station, the floodlight operator finally broke the silence. That thing we saw, what do we write in the report? Harper rubbed her face. Exhausted. We don't, she said. We found debris and signs of wildlife. That's it. No one argued. That night, I went home and showered twice, but I couldn't get that smell off my hands. When I closed my eyes, all I could see were those ripples spreading out in perfect circles. 2 days later, Harper called me. Her voice was low, uneasy. She said one of the rangers had gone back early that morning, alone, to collect a dropped camera case. They found his truck still parked by the gate. The door was open, key still in the ignition. No sign of him anywhere, but when they walked down to the dock, they found something sitting on the boards. A shoe. Same kind, same size, still wet. She told me that detail like she didn't even want to believe it herself. After that, the lake was officially closed again. They put up new warning signs, fenced off the access trail, sealed the path with a heavy chain. But sometimes, when I drive by that area on night shift, I pull over just to look at it. From the road, you can barely see the water through the trees, but when the wind's low, you can hear it, a soft lapping sound, like breathing. And every now and then, I see it again. The ripples, perfect, slow, deliberate, like something beneath the surface is still waiting, just under the calm. Sometimes, I tell myself it's just the current, that there's nothing there. But then I remember, Lake Delner doesn't have a current. And I remember Eli's voice, faint through the static, whispering, "Can you stay on the line with me?" The lake never really leaves you. Even after you drive away, after the road curves out of sight, something about it stays, like a sound you can't unhear. It had been 3 weeks since the investigation at Lake Delner, and I was trying to convince myself that life had gone back to normal. But it hadn't. I still worked nights at dispatch. Same room, same calls, but every time the radio crackled, I froze, because I kept waiting for that voice again, the one that shouldn't exist. The night it happened, I was halfway through my shift. The coffee on my desk had gone cold, the room humming with the low buzz of electronics. Nothing unusual, just the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own breathing. Then, the radio flickered. It wasn't a phone line this time. It was a short-range channel we use for local field comms, the one only the ranger units use. The same frequency from Lake Delner. At first, it was just static. Soft, steady, harmless. Then, faintly, something underneath. A low, bubbling sound. I leaned closer. It wasn't quite water, not exactly. It was thicker, wetter, like air trying to push through liquid. Then a voice broke through the distortion. "Dispatch." My stomach dropped. It was Eli. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stared at the radio, waiting for another sound. "Dispatch." It's... The rest of his voice drowned in the static, swallowed by a wet gurgling sound. Then silence. My hand shook as I grabbed the mic. "This is County Dispatch." "Who is this?" No response. Just that same bubbling noise, slow and rhythmic, like something exhaling underwater. I switched channels, checked the line, reset the unit, everything. The signal was real. It wasn't feedback. It wasn't interference. The frequency was locked on Lake Delner's range. Then it came again. "Don't." The voice cracked mid-syllable, glitching into a low groan. It was Eli. I was sure of it. He sounded close. Wet, like his mouth was full of water. I pressed a button. "Eli, if this is a prank, it's not funny. Where are you calling from?" Nothing. Then, faintly, under, the word dragged out too long, gurgling at the end before cutting off completely. The air in the room felt wrong. Too heavy. Too quiet. I should have called the supervisor. I should have logged the transmission and waited for a trace. But instead, I just kept listening. The static shifted again. The bubbling grew louder. For a second, I thought I heard movement behind it, like footsteps through shallow water. Then a sharp tone cut through. The radio beeped, switching frequencies on its own. That shouldn't be possible. The speaker went dead for a moment. Then the voice came back, clearer this time. Stay away from the water. It was Eli again. His voice was shaking. He sounded terrified. Eli, I said, where are you? A long pause. Then in a whisper, it's below me. Something in the way he said it made my skin crawl. Not fear, not panic, just certainty. Before I could respond, another sound came through the line. A deep, wet gurgle. It was rhythmic now, pulsing through the static like a heartbeat. Then, faintly, I heard splashing. Footsteps. Eli was moving, running maybe. Dispatch, he gasped. It's right under me. I can hear it. Then a rush of static, so loud it made me flinch. I turned down the volume, heart pounding, waiting for the noise to fade. When it did, there was nothing left but that same bubbling, steady and close. Then, quietly, a new voice came through. Not Eli's. Lower, wet, too slow to be human. It said, why are you listening? The words weren't clear. They were dragged through liquid, each syllable warped, like something speaking through water instead of air. I froze. My finger hovered over the mic, but I didn't answer. The voice came again, closer this time. Why are you listening? The way it spoke, it wasn't asking. It was imitating, like it had heard those words before and was trying to repeat them. Then static swallowed the signal again. The channel died completely. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the blank radio display. When I finally checked the logs, there was no record of any transmission, no timestamp, no source, nothing. The next day, I told Harper. She didn't laugh. She didn't even look surprised. She just said, you heard it too? I stared at her. What do you mean, too? She hesitated. Then she told me about the ranger who'd gone missing, the one who went back for his camera 2 days before he vanished. He'd called her in the middle of the night, said he'd heard something near the dock, a low, bubbling noise coming from beneath the planks. He told her it sounded like someone drowning, but never surfacing. She said she'd brushed it off at the time, but the next morning his truck was still there, and the lake was quiet again. That's when I realized what I'd heard wasn't just a transmission. It was something else, something reaching out. That night, I stayed late at dispatch again. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that maybe it was interference from a nearby station. But sometime past 2, the radio came alive again. A faint click, then that same low, wet sound, and under it a whisper. At first, it was too soft to make out. Then it grew clearer. Help me? It was Eli again. Eli, I said, gripping the mic. Where are you? Silence. Then, it's so cold. The line hissed. I could hear faint splashes, like footsteps moving through water. Then something heavier, a dragging sound. I felt every hair on my arm stand up. Eli, you need to tell me where you are. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We can send help. He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, almost like a thought slipping out, he said, it's not the water. What? It's under it. The static cracked, louder this time, filling the room with white noise. Through it, I thought I heard something else, faint but distinct, a second voice. Not words exactly, more like a deep, slow moan, stretched too long to sound human. It echoed through the static, like it was inside the signal. Then everything went silent again. The radio light flickered twice, then went dark. And for the first time since that night at the lake, I felt real fear, not what I'd heard, but of what might still be listening. I sat there until dawn, the room dead quiet. When I finally got up to leave, I noticed something on the floor near the desk, a small wet mark, circular. At first, I thought I'd spilled coffee, but when I touched it, it wasn't sticky or dry. It was water, cold. I wiped it up, but a few hours later, when I came back for my next shift, there were more, little droplets, all in a line, leading from the window toward the radio desk. That night, I unplugged the unit completely. But even without it, I could still hear it sometimes. That low gurgle, the sound of air struggling through water. And in those moments, I swear, I can hear Eli's voice underneath it. Not through the speaker, not from the lake, but from beneath everything. Like something waiting under the noise, patient, endless, and aware. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can almost make out words. Not English, not anything human. Just sound, deep, pulsing, and wet. But sometimes, when the world goes still, I can swear it's trying to form one clear word. My name. The lake looked different that morning. I don't know how to explain it. Same trees, same dock, same water, but it felt wrong. Like the whole thing had shifted slightly overnight. They said another camper had gone missing. This one wasn't Eli. His name was Daniel Hart. Mid-30s, part-time photographer. He'd been camping near the South Shore for a weekend trip. His sister reported him missing after he stopped answering texts. I didn't want to go back, but Harper asked me to. Said she trusted my attention to detail. That was her way of saying she didn't want to go alone. So I went. We reached the lake just after dawn. Mist rolled across the surface, thick and low, curling like smoke. The shoreline looked empty, untouched, like no one had ever camped there. But that wasn't true. The ranger said Daniel's car was still parked near the gate. His gear permit matched the South Dock area. He'd signed in. He'd never signed out. We followed the trail to the water. It was quiet. No birds, no wind, not even insects. Just that same dull, endless silence. The air smelled clean, too clean, like rain after a fire. Harper walked ahead, her boots sinking slightly into the mud. She stopped when she reached the dock. "Where's the tent?" she asked. There wasn't one. No tent, no fire pit, no cooler. No backpack, just flat ground, smooth as if something had brushed it clean. She turned to me. "You're sure this is the right spot?" I nodded. According to the map, yeah, this is it. We both just stood there, looking at the empty shore. The dock stretched out like a finger over the lake, old with gray and damp. The water lapped softly beneath it, slow and steady. Harper knelt to check the mud for prints, but there was nothing, not even Daniel's boot marks. It was like no one had ever stood there at all. We circled the area, checked the nearby trees. Nothing. No signs of struggle. No trash. No rope. No footprints. But the weirdest part, the ground felt firm. If a person had packed up and left, there would have been trails in the soil, impressions where gear had been. But the dirt was smooth. Too smooth, like it had reset. Harper muttered something under her breath and radioed the rangers. I barely heard her. I was staring at the water. The mist had thinned a little. I could see faint reflections of the trees and sky, but they looked wrong. Somehow, the reflection of the trees didn't match the ones behind me. They were leaning at different angles, darker, twisted. Then, just for a second, I thought I saw something move between them. Something pale. I blinked and it was gone. When Harper finished her call, she looked exhausted. "They'll bring the dogs out," she said. But even she didn't sound like she believed it would help. We sat for a moment on the edge of the dock. The boards creaked softly under our weight. Harper rubbed her hands together, trying to shake the cold. "You ever feel like the air here is heavier?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, "like you're being watched." She gave a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Exactly." We both stared out at the lake. The surface was still, too still, not even a ripple. Then, suddenly, something glinted just beneath the water. At first, it looked like a reflection, but then it drifted upward, a thin, silver object. Harper leaned forward. "Is that?" It was a key, just floating there, spinning slowly. Before either of us could reach for it, it sank, straight down. The surface smoothed over like it had never been there. Harper exhaled shakily. "That's not possible. Keys don't float." Neither of us said anything after that. We called in a small drone to scan the shoreline, but the feed was useless. Static bursts, lens fog, random flickers of white. By the time it landed, the battery was dead. Around noon, one of the rangers shouted from up the trail. We found something. We hurried over. He was kneeling near a patch of reeds by the water's edge. In the mud was a single object, half buried, slick with dirt, a camera. Harper carefully lifted it with her gloves. The strap was torn, the body scratched and dented. Daniel's initials were carved on the bottom. "Looks like it fell," she said softly. When we got back to the truck, she tried turning it on, but the battery was dead. We took it back to the station to extract the data. I stayed in the room while they worked. The first few images were normal. Photos of the forest, the lake, his camp setup. Then near the end, things changed. The last 3 photos were taken after dark. The first showed the lake's surface at night, perfectly still except for faint ripples near the dock. The second, it showed the same spot, but closer. And in the center of the frame, you could barely see something in the water. Round, pale, just beneath the surface. The third image was taken from the same position, but it was blurry, like the camera had been dropped mid-shot. All you could see was a smear of motion, then the reflection of the flash bouncing off water. No other photos after that. Harper stared at the screen for a long time. Then she said, "That's enough for today." She left the room without another word. I stayed behind, scrolling back and forth between the last 2 photos. If you zoomed in far enough on the second one, just before it blurred, you could see a faint shape near the bottom edge. It looked like a hand. I didn't tell her that part. That night, when I got home, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that reflection, the pale round shape under the water. At around 3 in the morning, I heard something, a soft knock. It came from the window. When I turned to look, there was nothing there, just condensation on the glass, running in long streaks, like fingerprints. The next day, Harper called again. She sounded tired. She said the Rangers had gone back to the South Shore to mark the investigation site. But when they got there, everything was gone. No dock, no reeds, no patch of disturbed mud. The shoreline had changed. Completely. Where the dock had been was now a narrow curve with smooth, untouched sand. The waterline had receded several feet. No footprints. No markers. It was like the land itself had shifted overnight. They checked GPS logs, confirmed the coordinates. It was the same place. But the lake had moved. I didn't even know that was possible. She said they spent hours walking perimeter, but they couldn't find the dock. No trace of it anywhere. And that's when I realized something. Every person who vanished there, Eli the ranger, now Daniel, had gone near the waterline. And every time someone did, the shoreline looked different afterward. It was like the lake was swallowing pieces of the world. Later that evening, Harper came by the office. She looked pale, jumpy. "I think I'm done with this case," she said quietly. I didn't blame her. When she left, I pulled up the lake feed from the Rangers' live satellite view. It showed the same thing, just calm water, still and perfect. But as I watched, the image flickered. Just once, and for a fraction of a second, the shoreline rippled. Not the water, the land itself. It moved like it was breathing. When the feed cleared again, the image looked normal. Still silent, but I knew what I'd seen. And I knew something else. Too, if the lake could shift the ground, it could erase anything. Anyone. Which means Eli didn't drown. Daniel didn't either. They didn't disappear. They were taken. And if that's true, then maybe they're still there. Somewhere beneath that perfect, untouched surface. Waiting. It was supposed to be a quiet shift. Thursday nights usually were. The kind of night where the radio stays silent for hours, and all you hear is the hum of the cruiser and the static crackle from the scanner. No emergencies, no drunks, no break-ins, just peace. That's how it started. I clocked in around 7 p.m. Same as always. The air outside was heavy with that late summer humidity, the kind that makes the trees sweat and the asphalt shine like oil. I poured my coffee, checked my sidearm, signed a log sheet, and gave Miller a nod as he headed out. We'd been doing this job together long enough to know we didn't need to say much. A look, a grunt, a smirk, that was enough. By 9:30, I was on my usual patrol route, down County Road 5, to the Pines past the empty church and around the Lake Road, the same path I'd driven for years. Sometimes I'd think about how much of this county I knew by memory. Every mailbox, every bend in the dirt road, every sound the tires made on the gravel. It all felt predictable. And then the calls started. The first one came in at 9:47. Dispatch said there was a disturbance at the Greenfield residence. Domestic dispute. Nothing major. I sighed, took a sip of coffee, and headed that way. When I pulled up, the lights were off. The house sat at the edge of the woods, small one-story, with peeling paint in a yard that had gone to hell. I knocked on the door. Nothing. Sheriff Department. I called out. Still nothing. Then I heard it. A faint sound from inside. A chair scraping against the floor. I knocked again, louder this time. Ma'am? Sir? You called 911. The door creaked open a few inches. Nobody was there. The living room was dark, except for the faint glow of a TV in the corner. A black and white movie was playing. One of those old ones where everyone speaks too fast and the sound crackles. I stepped inside, hand near my holster. The place smelled stale, like damp wood and cigarettes. There were plates on the table, 2 chairs, half-eaten food, but no one. I checked the kitchen, the hallway, the bedrooms. Empty. Everything felt frozen, like whoever had been here had just stopped existing mid-supper. The TV flickered behind me. For a second, I thought I heard voices whispering, not from the screen, but from somewhere deeper in the house. Then the sound cut out. Static. I turned it off and called dispatch. No answer. The radio light blinked, but all I heard was soft static, like someone breathing too close to mic. Then, just as sudden, it cleared. Unit 3, status check. I exhaled. Yeah, I'm good. False alarm at Greenfield. House is empty. Copy that, they said. I left the door as I found it, slightly open, and headed back to the car. The road was quiet again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still in that house, watching from behind those dark windows. By 10:20, I was back near town when another call came in. Suspicious activity, lakeside. The dispatcher sounded calm, routine, said a camper reported lights moving across the water, probably kids messing around with flashlights. I turned down the gravel road that led to Lake Menor. The moon hung low, thick and yellow, rippling on the water surface. When I pulled up, there was no one there, just the sound of water lapping against the dock and the faint whisper of wind through the reeds. I scanned the shoreline with my flashlight. The beam caught something metallic for a second, then it was gone. No movement, no noise. I was about to radio in when the cruiser lights flickered. Just once. Then again. I turned the ignition key off and back on. The lights stayed dead. Then I heard it, a soft tapping on the passenger window. I turned fast, heart jumping, but there was nothing there, just fog, thick, rolling fog starting to creep across the lake, spilling over the dock and toward the trees. Something about that fog, it didn't look right. Too heavy, too slow. It moved like it was alive. I got out, scanned the area again, and that's when I saw it. Footprints, bare footprints, leading from the water's edge up toward the road. They were small like a child's, but spaced too far apart. Each print was deeper than the last, like whoever made them was sinking. I followed them a few feet, then stopped, because the last one, it wasn't a print anymore. It was a hole, perfectly round, about 6 inches deep, filled with water. And the sound coming from it wasn't water. It was gurgling, low and uneven, like something breathing through mud. I stepped back, throat dry, and the sound stopped. The fog thickened, swallowing the dock completely. I turned and got in the car. The engine started on the first try. As I drove away, the radio crackled again. A voice came through, faint and shaky. Is anyone there? It wasn't dispatch. Who is this? I asked. Silence. Then, softly, don't come back to the lake. The voice was familiar. I couldn't place it right away, but it sounded like Eli, one of the deputies who'd gone missing 2 weeks ago. I froze. Eli. No answer. Just the same static hum, like breathing. Then it cut out completely. I pulled over, heart pounding, and tried to call it in. No response. The entire network went dead for almost 10 minutes. When it finally came back, I told dispatch about the voice, but they said the radio logs showed nothing. No transmission, no ID tag. Must have been interference. they said. I didn't argue, but I knew what I heard. The rest of the night, the calls kept coming, one after another. 10:58, noise complaint on Birch Lane. Empty house. TV flickering in the dark. 11:36, possible intruder near the old diner. Just wind banging the back door. 12:04, crying heard near the elementary school. No one there. Playground swing still moving. Every single call ended the same way. No people, no answers, no evidence. Just traces. By 1 a.m., I stopped answering them right away. I'd sit in the car for a few minutes, waiting to see if the calls would fade on their own. Sometimes they did. Sometimes they didn't. At 1:27, I got one last call. It came directly through my unit frequency. No dispatch, no ID, just a voice. Sheriff. It was a woman's voice this time. Soft, shaky. Yes, ma'am. What's your emergency? I can't find my husband, she said. Where are you located? No answer. I tried again. Ma'am, where are you? There was a long pause. Then she whispered, by the lake. The line went silent after that. I drove back toward the water. Against every instinct, I went. When I got there, the fog had lifted. The moon was higher now, pale and distant. The dock looked the same, still, quiet, perfect. But something caught my eye near the edge of the road. A phone, half buried in dirt. Screen cracked. When I picked it up, the background lit for a second. A photo. It showed the lake and a person standing at the very center of it. Not in a boat, not on a dock, just standing there on the surface, as if the water was solid beneath their feet. I looked up at the lake. It was empty. The photo timestamp said 1:27 a.m., the exact minute I got the call. I turned the phone off, put it in an evidence bag, and sat in the cruiser until the sun came up. When daylight finally hit the water, it looked normal again. Calm, blue, harmless. I told myself it was fatigue, long night, faulty radio, overactive imagination. But I've been in this job too long to lie to myself. The truth is, something was wrong out there. Something had been wrong for a while. And every night since then, around the same time, I still get those calls. Different voices, different names, all saying the same thing. They can't find their way back. And they always end with the same line. Sheriff, it's here again. You start to notice patterns in this job. Little things most people would miss. Like how some voices on the radio sound too calm. Or how certain addresses come up again and again. But no one lives there anymore. After a while, you learn not to think too hard about it. You just answer the call, do your job, and move on. At least, that's what I used to tell myself. It's been 3 weeks since that strange night. The one with the calls that went nowhere, the lake, the fog. But lately, things haven't gone back to normal. If anything, they've gotten worse. Every call feels off somehow. Every voice on the other end sounds hollow. It started with something small. I was at the station, sorting reports, when dispatch called in a welfare check. An older man out by Ridgeway claimed someone was standing in his yard every night at 2 a.m., said the figure never moved, never spoke, just stood there, watching his house until dawn. When I asked if he'd tried approaching it, he said no. He said, you can't walk towards something that's already too close. I didn't understand what he meant until I got there. The man's property sat near the tree line, his porch light barely reaching the first few rows of pines. I checked the ground, the fence, even the woods. Nothing. But when I turned my flashlight off, that's when I saw it. Not a person exactly. More like a shape, darker than the trees, standing just beyond the light. Still, it wasn't moving, but I could feel it watching, like its attention pressed against me, heavy and sharp. The second I turned my light back on, it was gone. No footprints, no movement, just the sound of leaves rustling far too late in the night. I told the man it was probably shadows or kids from town. He just shook his head. They don't breathe like that, he said. When I got back to my cruiser, I sat for a long time before turning the key. The night outside was silent, but inside the car I could still feel that gaze like it had followed me. That was the first night I realized something had changed. After that, every call had that same quiet weight behind it, like someone else was always listening. The next few nights were a blur. Noise complaints, a supposed break-in, a 911 hang-up, normal things on paper. But each one had a pattern. No witnesses, no culprits, no answers. And every single time I responded, the same static crackled on my radio right before dispatch spoke, like someone cutting in. At first, I thought it was interference from the tower, but the timing was too exact. Every time I stopped the cruiser, every time I stepped out into the dark, the static came first, then silence, then the voice. The call started sounding rehearsed too. A woman's voice one night, crying about footsteps on the roof. A man the next, whispering that someone's under the house. When I traced those numbers later, none of them existed. Unregistered, untraceable, gone. But dispatch swore they came through our line. I stopped sleeping much after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear faint breathing on the radio, not through the speaker, through my head, like an echo I couldn't turn off. By the fifth night, I was running on coffee and nerves. That's when the call came in from the church. "Sheriff, there's someone inside," the priest said. His voice trembled, thin and uneven. I was only 10 minutes out. When I arrived, the doors were locked, lights off, but I could see movement through the stained glass. Something shifting behind the altar. I knocked, called out, nothing. When I circled around the side door, I found it cracked open. Inside, the air was thick with incense and dust. The smell reminded me of old books and rainwater. My flashlight beam slid over pews, over the cross, over empty space. Then it landed on the confessional. The curtain moved slightly. "Sheriff Department." I said, "Anyone in there?" No answer. I stepped closer, hand near my holster. Then, the radio on my shoulder hissed softly. "Don't open it." It wasn't dispatch. It was that same voice, the one from the lake. "Eli." My breath caught. "Eli, where are you?" The radio buzzed again, louder this time, almost angry. "You shouldn't be here." And then silence. I stood there, staring at the curtain. I don't know why I did it, but I reached out anyway, pulled it open. Empty. Just a wooden seat, a Bible, and the faint smell of lake water. That smell hit me so hard I staggered back. It shouldn't have been there. We were miles from Menor Lake. When I looked down, I saw damp footprints leading away from the booth. Small, bare. They ended at the back door, then disappeared. I followed them outside, but the night was empty. The sound of frogs and crickets had stopped again, like the world was holding its breath. And somewhere deep in those woods, something whispered, not words, just sound, like static, faint but constant, rising and falling in the air. That night, I drove back to the station and sat in the parking lot until dawn. Didn't even turn the engine off. I tried to tell Harper about it the next morning, but she didn't even look up from her desk. She said she hadn't slept much either. She said she'd been hearing things too, voices over the line, someone breathing just before a call came through. I asked if she thought it was connected to the disappearances. She didn't answer. She just said, "You ever feel like the calls are meant for us?" That stuck with me. Later that night, we ran a test. We shut down the main line for 10 minutes to see if the interference would stop. It didn't, even with the system offline. A transmission came through. No caller ID, no routing data, just static and then a voice. Not Eli this time, someone else. They said, "We hear you." Then the radio popped once and it was gone. We both just sat there, staring at each other. Neither of us spoke. The next few days blurred together. The calls slowed down, but the feeling didn't go away. Everywhere I went, I could sense it. This quiet, invisible pressure in the air, like being observed through glass. At the grocery store, at the diner, even in my own house. Sometimes I'd glance at the mirror and swear I saw another reflection behind mine, not moving, just there. The worst was at night. Around 2 a.m., the static would return, soft at first, then louder. Sometimes I'd wake up to find my radio light blinking on its own. Other times, I'd hear faint tapping on the window, slow, deliberate. But the one that broke me happened last Friday. I was sitting in the cruiser, parked on the old bridge overlooking the valley. I used to come there to clear my head. I turned the radio off, pulled the plug out completely, but after a few minutes, the speaker clicked, soft at first, then again, then a voice whispered through, faint but clear. Still think you're alone? I froze. The voice wasn't Eli's. It wasn't any of the callers. It was mine. I sat there in the dark, staring at that dead radio, listening to my own voice breathe through the static. Still think you're alone? It repeated, over and over. The exact tone, the exact hesitation, like it was mocking the way I speak when I'm scared. I don't know how long I stayed there. By the time I looked up, dawn was breaking over the trees. I unplugged the radio completely, locked in the trunk, and drove home in silence. That was 4 nights ago. Since then, I've started hearing it even without the radio, in the hum of my refrigerator, in the buzz of the streetlights, in the quiet spaces between my own thoughts. Whatever this thing is, it isn't outside anymore. It's in the signal, in the air, in the silence, and sometimes, late at night, when everything goes still, I can almost make out what it's saying. It's not calling for help. It's listening and waiting for me to speak first. I've been in law enforcement for 22 years. In that time, I've heard just about every kind of voice over the radio. Panic, laughter, confusion, grief. But never voices that weren't supposed to exist. It started small, and at first, I told myself it was interference. Maybe a busted repeater tower, or some kid playing with a CB set. But the tone of it, the way in those transmissions, it didn't sound like a prank. It sounded like people trying to confess to something they couldn't live with. That week, the air was heavy, not in a weather sense. Just the kind of stillness that makes you feel watched. We'd already had a few weird calls. Campers vanishing, strange noises near the lake, and those reports of lights moving under the water. But nothing concrete. Nothing you could write a report about without sounding crazy. That night, I was the only one in the station after midnight. Jenkins had gone home early and dispatch was quiet. The radio hissed softly, the kind of white noise that usually puts you at ease. I had my coffee. I had my notes from the last missing person report. Everything was ordinary until it wasn't. At first, it was just a voice. Male, calm, low. This is Deputy Hall, copy. I froze because Deputy Hall had been missing for 3 days. I grabbed the receiver and called it back. Unit 4, repeat your call. Say your location. Nothing, just static. Then, I found her, the voice said. She's under the waterline. She's smiling. I stood up so fast my chair hit the floor. Hall, this is Sheriff Daniels. Where are you? But there was no answer. Just this low, almost mechanical breathing through the static. Then the channel cut out. I remember staring at the radio, waiting for it to come back. It didn't. I told myself maybe the signal was bleeding in from another frequency. That happened sometimes, but it felt wrong. The air in the room felt wrong, like I was standing in the middle of someone else's memory. Around 2 in the morning, it happened again. Different voice this time. A woman. I saw the lights again, Sheriff. It was faint, but the tone, it was familiar. Ma'am, this is the county sheriff's office. I said, picking up the mic, who is this? You told me to stay away from the lake. I felt my stomach twist, because that exact sentence, word for word, had been spoken by a woman named Carol Dean 3 nights before she disappeared. But her voice over the radio, it wasn't quite right. It was slower, softer, like she was underwater when she spoke. I didn't listen, she said. It wanted me to look. Then silence. No click of a mic. No cut-off noise. Just gone. I remember pacing the room, heart pounding in my chest, telling myself it had to be interference. But I could ignore the timing. Every voice came after a disappearance, after the calls we couldn't close. By the next evening, the other deputies had started noticing it too, during patrols, in the car, even when they switched frequencies, whispering through static, words they couldn't quite make out. Some swore it sounded like children laughing. Others said they heard names, their own names. Jenkins came into my office that morning, pale as a ghost. You're going to think I'm losing it, he said. But the radio in Unit 3, It was on when I got in the car. I swear I turned it off last night, and there was someone talking. Who? I asked. He looked down at his hands. It sounded like me. I didn't laugh. I couldn't, because part of me had already started to believe it. That night, I stayed late again. The lake reports were piling up. People missing, tents abandoned, fires still burning. And now these transmissions. The clock hit 1:14 a.m. when the radio lit up again. A burst of static first. Then a voice I'll never forget. You're listening now, aren't you? It was calm. Male. But it wasn't Hall. You keep writing down names. You keep pretending you can fix it. But you never look long enough. Identify yourself, I said. My voice cracked. You've already heard me. And then laughter. Not loud. Just this quiet, broken kind of laugh. I don't know why, but I said, what do you want? To finish the story. Then the static swallowed the signal. That phrase, finish the story, stuck with me because it was something Hall used to say when he was working late. He'd file a report and mutter, gotta finish the story, Sheriff. I sat there in the dark, staring at the radio, thinking maybe this thing, whatever it was, had learned how to use our words against us. Maybe it wasn't interference. Maybe it was something that had been listening for a long time. 2 nights later, Jenkins was on patrol near the lake. He called in a routine check, normal stuff. Then the radio went dead. We couldn't raise him for 10 minutes. When his voice finally came through, it was broken. They're in the water, he said. They're calling names. Then screaming. Then silence. We found his cruiser by the tree line the next morning. Driver's side door open. Engine still running. No sign of him. But the radio was still on. And through the static, faint as a whisper, we heard Sheriff Daniels. My name. I'll admit it now. I didn't go near the lake after that. I couldn't. I started hearing the voices even when the radio was off. Just faintly, like echoes through metal. They'd say things like, I found her, or she's smiling, or you didn't listen. Always the same phrases. Always the same tones of calm mixed with panic. I even tried recording them once. Set up a voice recorder beside the radio overnight. But when I played it back the next morning, nothing, just static, except for the very end. A faint whisper. You can't record what's still happening. I don't remember turning the recorder off. But when I came to, the office clock said 4:33 a.m. and the lights were flickering. Since then, the transmissions have changed. They're not just voices of people we know. Sometimes they sound like me, saying things I never said. One night, I heard myself calling Jenkins' name. The voice was trembling, desperate. I didn't say those words, but I remember hearing them. Don't go near the shore. It's not water anymore. I stayed up until sunrise after that. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't turn the radio off either. I've talked to the State Department. They said it's impossible for a radio to transmit on its own without a source. But something's broadcasting out there. Something that knows our call signs, our reports, our words. Sometimes it repeats fragments of old conversations. Things I said years ago. Things I thought I'd forgotten. Routine night calls. It said last week, you said it was just the wind. And that's true. I did say that years ago. My first month on the job. There was this old woman who called about whispers outside her trailer. I told her it was the wind. She went missing the next morning. Now I wonder if she heard it too. I don't think it's trying to scare us anymore. I think it's trying to remind us. Of what? I don't know. But there's something buried beneath that lake. Something that listens, learns, and repeats. Like it's waiting for us to say the right words. To let it through. Sometimes I wonder if every call we've ever taken, every report, every disappearance, is just another transmission. Not from the people who lived it, but from whatever's underneath. The sound of confession isn't always guilt. Sometimes it's the sound of something trying to be heard. And lately, when the nights are quiet and the static hums just right, I swear I can hear them whispering beneath the noise. Not calling for help, not warning me, just waiting. And sometimes the voice that answers back sounds exactly like mine. I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. The radio wouldn't stop hissing. Long after the last voice faded. Long after Jenkins' unit went quiet. It was like the air itself was trying to breathe through the speakers. By the time the sky began to pale, I remember thinking that sunlight would fix everything. It usually does. Every sheriff learns that lesson early. Daylight shrinks the monsters back into the corners where they belong. But when dawn finally came, nothing felt lighter. The world just looked tired. Mist rolled low over the lake, thick enough to hide the water entirely. The trees were black silhouettes, their reflections blurred by fog. The air smelled strange, metallic, almost like wet iron. I stood by my cruiser, the engine still running, and listened. No birds, no insects, no sound except that low, distant hum that had haunted us all night. Dispatch crackled once, then silence. Then again, Unit 1 report. It was a woman's voice. Calm, professional, but we didn't have a female dispatcher. I picked up the mic, forcing my voice steady. This is Sheriff Daniels. Identify yourself. Nothing, just a soft breath through the static. Copy that, she said, and the line went dead. I didn't call back. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too much. Jenkins was gone. Hall was gone. Half the units near the lake hadn't checked in, and all I had was that voice on the radio. Calm, familiar in a way I couldn't place. I decided to drive down to the shoreline. Anyway, maybe I just needed proof. Something real. Something solid to bring me back from the edge of whatever the hell was happening. The closer I got, the worse it felt. The fog didn't lift with the sun. It thickened. The road disappeared in it. And the only thing guiding me forward was the sound of gravel under the tires. When I reached the dock, the lake looked wrong. It was still, but not peaceful, like glass stretched too tight. The kind of stillness that makes you afraid to breathe. Jenkins' cruiser was there, half covered in dew. His flashlight lay in the grass, still on. His boots were gone, so were his prints. But his radio sat on the hood. The red light blinked every few seconds, still active. I remember staring at it, trying to decide if I was brave or just desperate. Then I pressed the call button. Unit 3, this is Sheriff Daniels. If you're out there, answer me. A beat of silence. Then, copy, Sheriff. It was Jenkins' voice. Calm. My heart slammed against my ribs. Where are you with them? Who? You'll see. The static rose like wind in my ear. Then another voice came through. The same one from before. The woman. Sun's up now, Sheriff. You should rest. Her tone wasn't cruel. It was almost kind, like someone trying to soothe a child who'd seen something awful. I'm not leaving, I said. You already did. Then the line went dead. I looked around, the fog shifting, the sunlight trying to break through in pieces. The lake's surface shimmered faintly, like something moved beneath it. Not ripples, exactly. More like shapes. For a second, I thought I saw faces in the water, reflections that weren't mine. Then they were gone. I don't remember walking back to the car. I just remember sitting there, engine running, staring into that fog and feeling like I'd forgotten something important, something about time. When I checked my watch, the second hand wasn't moving, just ticking in place. Then the radio clicked again. Sheriff, copy. My throat tightened. It was my own voice. You said daylight would fix it, but you were wrong. I dropped the mic like it was burning. The sound kept going, my voice echoing softly through the static. You didn't finish the story. I got out of the cruiser and backed away. Every instinct told me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The air was too heavy. The fog pressed against my skin like water. And then something changed. The hum I'd been hearing since the night before, that low vibration in the air, began to fade, replaced by something softer. Whispering, hundreds of voices, layered on top of each other, all speaking too quietly to understand. But one word cut through. Stay. It came from everywhere. From the trees, the lake, the radio, even from my own mouth, without me realizing I'd said it. The fog thinned just enough for me to see the edge of the dock again. There was a figure standing there. I couldn't make out the face, just the outline, someone in uniform, still staring into the water. I called out. No answer. When I took a step closer, the figure tilted its head slightly, like it had heard me but didn't care to respond. Then it raised its hand, slow, mechanical, and pointed to the lake. The water rippled once. Just once. Then perfectly still again. And when I blinked, the figure was gone. I remember driving back to the station without thinking. The whole time, the radio stayed on, whispering faintly, no matter what frequency I turned to. Every station, every channel, filled with that same faint breathing. When I got there, the sun was high in the sky, but the world felt dim. The other deputies were sitting in silence, staring at their radios too. One of them, Avery, looked at me and said, "You heard it too, didn't you?" I didn't answer. He nodded like he already knew. He said he'd been listening since dawn. Said he heard Jenkins. Said Jenkins told him to look behind the sun. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. But as the day went on, none of US could shake the feeling that something had followed us back. The static had moved from the lake to our radios, and from the radios to us. When you spend enough time listening to something that isn't supposed to be there, your brain starts filling in the gaps. But this wasn't that. This was an imagination. Every time I tried to turn the radio off, I could still hear faint whispers in the room, not through the speaker, through the air itself, like it had soaked into the walls. By evening, the fog was gone, the sky clear, but the dread hadn't lifted. The sunlight didn't burn away. It only showed how deep it ran. We logged the night as unexplained interference. That's what the report says. But I couldn't bring myself to file it. Not really, because part of me knows the report would just vanish, like they all do. And that's the worst part. It's not the voices or the disappearances or the things in the lake. It's how easily the world forgets them. Like the daylight isn't here to save us. It's here to erase the evidence. Sometimes I wonder if that's what the sunrise really is. Not an ending, but a cover-up. Because every morning since that night, the radio still crackles at dawn, always at the same time. A voice comes through, calm, patient, waiting. "Good morning, Sheriff." I never answer, but it always adds the same thing, right before the signal fades. You made it through the night, but the night never ended. And even now, when the sun is up and the world is bright, I can still hear the faint hum in the air, like something deep beneath the water is still awake, still listening, waiting for the dark to come back.